Hi guys, welcome back to Two Worlds Collide podcast. On today's episode, we have Matt Williams, aka Willie Beating Cancer. Matt is an independent war reporter who's been on the ground covering some of the world's most intense conflicts, from Russia to Ukraine to the ongoing situation in Israel. He's not just a reporter though. Matt is also an ex-military veteran with a deployment to Afghanistan under his belt. That experience gives him a unique perspective when it comes to understanding the realities of war, both for the soldiers and the civilians caught in the middle. I hope you guys enjoy. Image with it all now. And these mics. So I went and got these mics. These are really good ones.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't think you had these fucking last time.
Yeah, these are the...
These are SM7s. These are fucking good to go.
Man, they're about $900.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It does.
Makes significant difference.
Yeah, it's... they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. They're just so crisp. When you listen back to it on a podcast or YouTube, you're like, that listens.
I will say too, aesthetically, the Shure mics like these were made famous by Rogan.
Yeah.
And it's now like the podcasting standard. Like even if there are objectively better microphones, in the thousands of dollars range, but it's like that is the podcast standard, which whatever, I'm here for it.
Yeah. No, these are great. These are probably since I changed over to these, I always thought, my podcast got real professional, but nothing really changed at all. But mate, I wanted to tell you about that story. So last Friday night, we were just chatting off air. So last Friday night, and this was, I initially got invited months ago to speak at this rural liberal event up in the hills in Adelaide. And this is probably when things weren't really kicking off too much. I probably had about 50,000 followers or something, and it's nowhere near what's happening right now with all my social media platforms and all these, Sky News contacts me to go and stuff like that. None of that was happening. And I said, a friend reached out and said, can you speak at this liberal event? There's a couple 100 people there. And I thought to myself, yeah, look, I'll go along. Right. Thinking that the Liberal Party is more right-leaning than I probably...
See where you went wrong? We have a hard left and a soft left party, mate.
Yeah, and, mate, I rocked up there and I started talking and, I started off talking about debt and, what happens when we keep running into debt. And we're at 900 billion now. We're forecasted for 1.3, 1.4 and by 2029. And I thought to myself, well, if we're forecasted, don't you think we should do something about it? And then obviously, being in that much debt, our government doesn't want to cut waste. And then what does it do from there to boost productivity? We'll just flood the place with people. And we don't want to use our own natural resources to boost manufacturing around here because that would be bad for the planet, even though we ship everything off to China and India to burn anyway. And then the third way to increase productivity is to raise taxes, and you're seeing that right now, right? Like this EV tax. They're talking about potentially taxing your spare bedroom. Came out a report the other day.
Or there's taxes on super, ones that people don't realise as well. And the absolute next one will be inheritance tax. There is absolute. I believe we're the only Western state without it.
It's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming. And then there's a tax to rich. That they brought out. Anyway, and I said, we are just, unfortunately, we're going off a debt cliff, and it's not going to be you and me. But if you're having a kid or your grandchildren, they're going to be the ones that are cop the full front of what's happening right now and the debt that we're getting ourselves into. And I said, this is Labor's problem right now, but we've been accumulating this debt for years and years, so it's both Labor and Liberals' problem. And then I went on to say, and if you think Susan Ley and her leadership is going to change anything in this country, I said, you are completely wrong. She will still accumulate debt like the Labor Party is. She will still flood us with the mass immigration that's happening at the moment. She will not talk up or speak out against DEI because she champions DEI and these woke policies. And I just thought nothing will really change. And there was a pocket of moderates in this crowd, and they started abusing me. And mate, one of my friends was watching, and he said once they started abusing you, it was like you calmed down to a point, and you just strategically tore these people to shreds. One lady got up and abused you, and it was question time. And she just came out and abused me, and I just looked back at her. I said, have you got a question? Because that was a statement. If you're going to sit there and abuse me, that's fine. But if you don't have a question, can you sit down and hand the mic to someone else? But whilst all this was erupting and they were going nuts at me, I really elevated it, and I turned and I said, And this DEI crap, right? Susan Ley is nothing but a DEI hire, and DEI stands for didn't earn it. And I said she needs to get out of that seat, let someone else get in there, someone that's actually going to make change and not just repeat the same net zero fantasy, mass immigration and debt collected country that we are. And at the end of it, I got like a 3 to 5 minute standing ovation from the crowd, like 80% conservative people, and there was like this 20% moderate that were a group of moderates that are sitting, front left or front right, and they did not clap, and they just stood there. Also, a few of them were maybe clapping. So I went and stood right in front of them and just held my chin up, and I just thought, "Fuck you guys." But that was probably the first and last time I ever go out and do a public speaking gig again.
Yeah.
To be honest, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was actually, I don't know if you've done public speaking gigs in front of a few hundred people and that. It was such good practice.
It is very good practice. It's a very difficult thing to get your head around as well. I've done a fair bit of public speaking, mostly private stuff.
Having to think on the run as well. So it's easy to grab a mic and talk in front of people. But when you got people clapping back at you, and then also question time, where they've got questions and they try to challenge your narrative, to be able to stay very cool, calm, collected, and then to argue back with very factual points, that's how you tear people down. You don't tear people down by yelling at them or screaming at them. You tear them down by collectively taking a breath, assessing the situation, and then strategically taking them apart with facts. And that's what my mate said. He goes, once the heat came on when people were going nuts here, he said everything just seemed to... your world just seemed to get relaxed, and then you just took them apart. But it was, what I probably say never say never. You know what I mean? Like my mum said to me, because I was talking to her about this the other day, I'm like, I'm never doing this when I was speaking gig again. She's like, never say never. And I sort of just convinced myself then, thinking, I maybe would, because they're actually really fun. You get up there, you give people some points, and then they challenge you on them points, and that's the part of a democracy, right? But the one part is, I must say, there was this, and I'm going to waffle on here, but we will start the podcast in a minute. Mate, as I was talking about Susan Ley and ripping into her a bit, I think she's pretty close to Susan Ley, might be one of her deputies or something. Anyway, she just got up during my speech and walked out. And I thought to myself, you're exactly what is wrong with politics. You can't even sit there and listen to a member of the public come up, give a different argument for what's happening at the moment, different point of views, and challenges your current narratives. You can't even sit there and listen. You shouldn't even be a senator. You shouldn't even be in that seat. How are you meant to listen to the people of Australia when you can't even listen to someone that challenges your narratives? And when they do, you just get up and walk out. I just thought to myself, I'm like, oh, man,
mate,
this is our leadership. This is our leadership.
It is. No, it's not. It's not our leadership. It is a cancer growing through many leaderships around the world that are becoming, in many terms, illiberalist, or as I would refer to as more woke imperialist. That we want to be democratic, we want to be liberal, we want to be capitalist, but only by this left and right of arc that sits within what may be classed as wokeism, if you will, to use, I guess, a very basic set of goalposts. I don't like the term woke. I don't even like the term left or progressive. I don't think it fits exactly what is occurring there. But this woke imperialism of you can only do this as long as it fits within this. And I've spoken especially about Europe, where my wheelhouse mainly sits, is around Europe, is the European states, even within inter-European politics, there is woke imperialism in it. That if Hungary wants to do this, a very conservative country. Now, you can say what you will about Mr. Orban potentially being very corrupt and whatever, but he was a democratically elected leader. And you saying, no, we are limiting this on you, or you are to exit the room when we have a vote, so then we can abstain from your vote. That is woke imperialism. It is an imperialistic nature to influence politics, not by the end of a bullet or a barrel, like we used to over the past hundreds of years. It's more sinister, it's more Machiavellian, and I'm seeing it everywhere. Absolutely. And again, this is challenge of narratives, which people, of course, in government who work in diplomacy, like how can you not accept that you're going to be challenged on this? And I'm a freedom of speech absolutist, probably beyond where most people would say that they're happy with freedom of speech. And this is where I see even like the final phone call with President Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation was on the 23rd of February 2022. He invaded on the 24th. The next phone call to him was after President Donald Trump entered the White House. Over 3 years beyond the war.
So now, Biden didn't call him?
No one did. It got frozen out. Now,
isn't that wild?
No, well, this is my thing. Is you can think of what you will of Putin, okay? And whatever, okay? You think of it. But he is the leader of an incredibly old, incredibly powerful nation who has just launched an invasion against a country of which we are allies with, of Ukraine. Regardless of what you think of Ukraine or you think of Russia, the West is an ally of Ukraine. We are participating in this war. Absolutely. If Australian Abrams are on the ground, that we are participating in the war. And we haven't picked up the phone. For someone who has been in diplomatic spheres for decades, Putin has met all different sorts. He's met from the Queen to all these presidents, all these ministers of foreign affairs, all of this. And no one picked up the phone to go, even if you pick up the phone and go, hey, mate, you're a cockhead, don't invade your neighbour. But to have a diplomatic freeze out, I think that just goes against everything that our societies were built on foundationally. I just don't. And I would have the same criticism of Trump at the moment with not meeting with Albanese. Now, I'm not a fan of Albo. And
just because you don't like someone doesn't mean you don't have to not meet him. You know what I mean? Like, yes. You have to have the respect for if you don't respect Albo, you should still, and I don't like Albo either, but if you don't respect Albo, you still have to respect the position of Australian Prime Minister. Doesn't matter who's there.
Salute the rank, not the man. Yeah. It depends who it is. But at the end of the day, a democratically elected leader is a democratically elected leader. And this is where I think people need to see democracy for what it is, for the rights and wrongs and what you do and don't like. Okay? A lot of Americans and a lot of more conservative people, like your audience, okay, and my audience, they won't like Mr. Gavin Newsom from California. But if you look at California, he's probably a good leader for California. Now, I don't think California's on a good trajectory, but he's democratically elected into this position. Same as the gentleman down in Florida. Now, this is where America is so diverse across different Americans. People from Darwin and Townsville, Adelaide and Sydney, we're all fairly similar. America, you go to Florida, you go to California, you go to Nebraska. It's a different world.
Yeah, and they speak differently.
It's everything, but they think differently. And this is where, though, whether it is this gentleman, that gentleman, there needs to be a respect of the democratic principle, or the democratic principle will fall apart. And we are going more and more down this line of authoritarianism disguised as democratic. Absolutely, that's where I see things going. You just need to look at what has happened in the French. Look at what happened in the UK. Look at some of the smaller European nations and the leverage that the EU has. Look at Romania with Călin Georgescu. This was fairly recent with this. Whether it did or did not happen, Mr. J.D. Vance talked about this, about there was a few $100,000 that maybe pushed him on TikTok, maybe, that there's a loose tie potentially back to the Russians. And then there was enough leaning from the European Union to get him booted out and not run again for an election which it was the 11th hour and he was about to win. And if I recall correctly, Vice President J.D. Vance said, if your democracy can be undermined by a few $100,000, it wasn't very strong to begin with. But we see leaning on that, and this is where some of these institutions, in my opinion, are ripping apart at the seams. I'm very glad Australia isn't part of the European Union. Of course, I'm not a European state, but I'm glad we're not part of that union. But we look at what's happening over in the UK, and that I think the UK is a window into the future of 6 to 12 months for Australia.
Yeah, I said that in my speech on Friday night. I said I think we're always about 3 to 5 years behind the UK with some of their, just generally, right? But I definitely think with their laws, their hate speech laws and this under 16 ban, they did an under 18 ban, like we are slowly creeping into a mass surveillance of our online systems, people like myself and anyone else except the media that don't agree with the narrative. All these misinformation and disinformation like laws that are starting to get sparked up again to talk into Parliament. I've seen a few things today where they were having these discussions, and I think to myself, I don't reckon we're too far behind the UK with this mass surveillance thing. I think there's 33 people getting jailed a day for online posts in the UK. I think with Russia, that comes after about like 10,000 a year or something like that. Russia had like 900 in 1 year compared to the UK, and like one's a democracy and one's under Putin. And like
one's a hybrid authoritarianship, hybrid democracy. It's a weird sitting there, and one is a pseudo democracy. Like at the end of the day, I always try and say we practice democracy, because nothing is truly, in my opinion, democratic. We have a two-party system and mass funding and all. Like at the end of the day, we practice democracy to the best we can, but it's never perfectly democratic.
I wouldn't even say it's actually a democracy anymore, even in South Australia. Did you see the recent laws that Peter Malinauskas brought out?
No.
So he brought out a law that's on face value, fantastic, right? So no more party or political candidate or MP can take any donations from anywhere.
Yes.
So on face value, like, yes, we're taking the money out of politics, which is what needs to happen, right? But he capped all these donations to $5,000 per individual. So now, for me, if I wanted to, say, start a common sense reform movement or into a party in South Australia, I'm capped at $5,000 per donation. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because your Labor and Liberal, they are getting taxpayer-funded dollars, and that amount of taxpayer-funded dollars you get goes off the last election's results. So if the Labor government here got 50% of the vote, they get 50% of the taxpayer-funded dollars. Now, in the last 3 years, Peter Malinauskas and his team spent $140 million on advertising, right, out of that purse. And little old me, I've just been capped now at $5,000 per donation. So I'm going up against $5,000 per donation versus the juggernaut of a Labor Party that can now spend that have spent $140 million in the past 3 years on advertising. Yeah. Who do you think's going to win? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is my argument with we're in a democracy. Well, I don't think we are, because they've just made it, in South Australia, they've made it near on impossible now for a grassroots movement to move up. So it doesn't matter if you vote Labor or Liberal. They're still going to be printing debt. They're still going to be helping mass immigration. They're still going to be chasing a net zero fantasy, all this sort of stuff. You may think that a little bit might change, but overall it's not really going to change. It's just one's blue and the other's red.
Yes. Well, this is the argument that, and I spoke to you about this the other day, where I said, look, at the end of the day, the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, Liberals got arguably more to answer for. In the past 25 years, I believe 17 of those were under the coalition government. Like, well, hang on. It's easy for you to lose the election, get smoked in the election, and then be like, we're trying to do this and blah, 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 and the woke and the... You're like, no. You guys got fucking smoked. You deserve to get smoked. And you have been in, 2/3 of the time, and we're still in a deteriorating situation, of which we are. We have all lines are leading to a deterioration in Australia's standard of living. All lines. Now, have we crossed an event horizon of which there's no coming back? I don't know. But we definitely may have. And again, like the fog of war, you're walking through the fog. You don't know where you're going until you turn around and you have 20/20 vision. So we may look back, it was actually 2014 that this occurred. Maybe we will. Or maybe we haven't reached that event.
History will tell that story.
Sorry?
History will tell that story.
Yes, history will tell that story. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of people who are now being classified as extremists are just looking outside of the major two parties and going, you just don't represent anything that I represent. And this is people on both, if you will, the right and the left. Or I much prefer to use the terms traditionalism and postmodernism, because what I see as something continuously happening on the right is I want to roll back the clock. To roll back, but it's like, how far do you want to roll back? We don't want to roll back 100 years, do we? But people go, we want back 20 years ago. And so I do think the right get caught in this idea of, but we can't have a regression when we live in a world that is progressing with technology. Not progressive, but is progressing. But you want a reinstatement of traditional values. That's why I typically like to say that the right is more looking into traditionalism. And the left, postmodernist or postmodernism, as far as that truths are more subjective to your experience or relative truths. So for a very, very poor example, I guess, and this is at low-hanging fruit, and I apologise, is gender. That if you take gender as a subjective truth, as a relative truth, I feel like this, I think I'm this, therefore I am. And that is taking a truth as something as your experience with that, or as a relative truth, or postmodernist. And that's where I believe a lot of the more left is sitting. That a lot of what they hold as truth is either a experience to something. It's subjective in nature. As far as, well, I don't have a problem with immigration. No immigrant's ever done anything wrong to me, which is true to me. So therefore, I'm fine with lifting this number 5x. The problem I do see on the right, to be critical as well, is over-objective. And when you get over-objective, this is when you get out of that we live in a society where people have feelings and experiences. And you need to sit somewhere between that. Not all truth is just X or Y. That there is nuance. We're human beings. But not all truths are as you feel and see either. That is completely subjective. And that's where I see so much of it. But I just think we are so far one way, leading to, if you feel about it this way, therefore it is. And no, it's not. If you have this chromosome, therefore you are. That again, it's low-hanging fruit, but I think to understand the concept of that. And that's where I see so much of what is held to be correct. I'm like, well, what is that based on? Everything down to having a multi-ethnic society. This is our strength. What is that based on? Like, what do you actually put? And I will happily listen to any argument on either way on that. But what is that actually based on? Is it just based on an experience? Is it based on how you feel? Because just because you feel something's right doesn't mean therefore it is. And I think we're making a lot of anything from policy to public statement on that, rather than on taking into account ideas from Nietzsche about people's experience inner and with others, and as well from very objective truth. But if you go too far either way, you start getting in trouble. And we are so far one way that anything the other way seems incredibly extremist.
Yeah.
And
that's what's happening at the moment.
Regular blokes from 10 years ago are now extremists. It's not the blokes that have moved. It's the goalposts have moved. Now, I will preface that and say there has been more of a push to extremism that is in relation to your environment. I like to think that all human beings are not born radical, okay? People who become radical, in my opinion, are always a product of their environment. Now, that environment have all sorts of factors, from religion to society to wealth to family to whatever. But we also need to look at and go, if a huge amount of young people are getting radicalized into far right or far left, what's going on? Why is this? Why are more young men going from moderate to, I'm okay with, I'm all right with some immigration, and I want some support, blah, 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 to now more young men going, I don't want any of that. And that's where you get Nick Fuentes 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Everyone would have gone, fucking, who's that bloke? Now, millions of people, I think he's the most famous public figure on the right by a fucking mile.
Who's that?
Nick Fuentes. He's the most banned man on the internet.
Wow, okay. You have to show me him after.
Oh, you'll recognise him.
Yeah.
People would have laughed him off and gone, he's a racist pig, whatever. Well, now, so many people are moving to that and going, yeah, well, that's how I really do feel because of my reaction. And I feel the same on the left. I feel genuine empathy for people on the left, because I can honestly see why people are moving that way. That you have been told, if you go through school, you can be whatever you want to be. You can go to university, you'll graduate with a job, you will then, you have a freedom of thought in university, which is what university is meant to be about. It's not freedom of one thought, it's not freedom of left, it's freedom of every thought. It's what university is meant to be, is a bastion of ideas. It's meant to be protected, and then I'll get a job and buy a house, and I can do whatever. Where more and more people are finding out that is impossible, so they're getting pushed further and further down to wanting overreach of the state and further support, and believing truths which may not be.
Communism.
Yeah. To a degree, if you will. And you can see why more people are becoming socialists, communists, because you go, well, hang on, these people have all this asset, all this money, all of this. I can't fucking put food on the table. You get pushed, and what I'm trying to get at is the environment creates the extremes, and I'm not surprised at all to see more people one way or the other.
It's very
more people, more people relating to these people.
It's very interesting that you bring this up, because I had this exact discussion on Friday night, and I said, we are in a time of extremism, and what I'm seeing, I have never seen in my lifetime before, and I think this is like a government inaction has brought this on, potentially, right? And obviously, as well, if you get into times where people are really struggling to put food on the table, they're struggling to pay rent, they will start to turn to these extremisms, and it's the product of your environment, which you're talking about. Now, there is this different environment where, what we're teaching our kids in schools at the moment to watch what they're learning in universities, and then there's this other environment of, I might call it, sort of like a realist of a society, where if you sort of stay away from the schooling system and then universities, you come up with a different set of ideas. But I just think we're in this, like, for example, you said before, like a lot of these people 10 years ago, if they're themselves now, they would be called a right-wing extremist. My page would not be going anywhere near as well as it would if I would have done this 5 years ago. But now that I think that I'm talking about a bunch of common sense, a whole bunch of people from that 5 to 10 years ago are going, yeah, this guy he's talking what happened 10 years ago, and that was normal then. Yes.
Well, I think a good representation of this is the comedy of which is popular at the time. Look at the most popular comedians at the moment in the world. A lot of them are not that funny. They're just prepared to say shit that you wouldn't get away with in a comedic way.
I was talking to my friend about this the other day. Comedians are always early with everything.
Yes.
They're always the first to say something.
Comedians get judged as, these sort of guys cracking jokes and whatever, unbelievably smart. Go and listen to Jimmy Carr speak on anything, and you're like, this guy's unbelievably sharp.
I've had Amos Gill in here, and he's like yourself, one of the greatest word linguists I have had in here, and you guys relate quite a bit. You're very highly intelligent individuals. You can regurgitate all this information and just hold a mic and speak there for hours, and that's very hard to do. Trust me, I do it all the time.
But the comedians that are popular are just a reflection of society that people are annoyed by. Why do you think people like Shane Gillis so much? Because he's one of the boys.
Yeah.
He's not scared to use the word retard. He's not scared to use the word gay. He has an uncle who has Down syndrome, who there's actually a clip of him with Andrew Schulz where he very much actually defends against when it was crossing a line of what actually is offensive. And he has absolutely no hatred at all towards people who are homosexual. But the term gay is not used in that context when he says it or uses it. And it's not meant to be offensive. And that's why he's, in my opinion, he's the most popular comedian in the world at the moment from the views that I see. And that's why he's so popular, is because people have this idea of, well, I can't get this anywhere else, and it's speaking a truth of which I can't consume at the office, at the workplace, anything. And I think, and you are incredibly correct when you say that comedians are very early on takers to it. And someone like yourself, and you touched on it brilliantly, 5 years ago, if you posted these videos speaking about the things of which you do, you would have no viewership. Not to bash on your skill. I think you're fantastic at what you do. But people go, yeah, no shit, mate. Whatever.
This is normal. Yeah.
And other people in the audience, say you're on the conservative traditionalist side more so, and then someone like Abby Chatfield, which she would not have had an audience back then at all, because people would have gone, well, what the fuck are you on about? Now she is, I was speaking to a mutual friend of yours and mine, I won't say his name, and he said, I was laughing because he said, Sam's the conservative version of Abby Chatfield. And I'd like to wish you on your success.
Who is that, mate? I need to talk to them after this.
But I'll let you know. But again, Abby gets a lot of bullshit when I think that what she is doing, which sometimes seems hysteria, is a reasonable reaction to what she believes to be true. Now, I don't want to rip apart Abby. I was actually very close a while back to actually messaging Abby and going, hey, look, I work in, looking at geopolitics and international affairs. You're obviously having a hard time. Like, would you like to privately call me and I can explain some of the nuances on this to put your mind at ease? Privately, because I'm like, this is obviously really getting to you. Now, Abby is a great example, I think, of what I was talking about on the left as far as a relative truth, therefore coming out as subjective truth that they see as objective, okay? Is she put up a video the other day that people were laughing at, and I thought, don't laugh at this, was her in hysteria about the climate catastrophe, I believe.
Is this the one where she said, I'm not going to have kids?
About children.
Yeah.
Now,
I was like, oh my God.
Now everyone laughs at this, and it's easy to brush it off as silly. But the point I want to make is...
This is what she truly believes. This is her belief.
That is a genuinely fair enough reaction if you believe the world is ending in a few years, okay? If I found out that if I fully believed in 2 or 3 years the world was ending due to what we are doing.
Exactly right. You wouldn't have a kid.
And this is and I wish her all the best, but this is what I think is the nth degree of this subjective reality becoming a truth. That, to quote Seinfeld, if you believe it, Jerry, it's not a lie. And that's the thing, is if you are so drunk the Kool-Aid on this, and you don't think this is traumatic to her? She honestly believes the world is going to end in a few years unless we tax BHP. Now, I can tell you right now, we could nuke BHP and it's not going to do shit to the climate because China is digging the fuck out of every rare earth they can anywhere to strangle the world's economic boom of military minerals. China is absolutely strangling the American military right now, which is probably the single most stupid thing I've ever considered, being like, hang on, so 90% of what American military needs is produced by your largest competitor.
That's wild.
Like, okay, are you a fucking idiot? You've given them the keys to the fucking DeLorean, mate.
What if they just shut it down tomorrow?
Well, they have shut it down. America can't make anything.
Wow.
I'm not sure how aware you or your audience may be of this. Currently, China is strangling in response to Trump's tariffs, which I would say in the beginning I was a large fan of Trump. I think Trump is actively turning back decades of diplomacy and political soft political power everywhere, and I think it's turning into a catastrophe that we won't see for a while. Although I was a big fan and supporter in the beginning, now I'm seeing this, I'm going, oh, fuck. But in reaction to this, they've just cut off these rare earths. We can't produce F-35s. We struggle to produce bullets. We struggle to produce thermal and night vision and everything.
When you mean we, is it the West?
The West. But the West is completely reliant on the US too. Like we are completely reliant on the US. And all these rare earths. And you know why we can't produce these rare earths? We can do it. But it is so dirty to do, we will not do it. Because we're trying to reach all these targets.
Net zero targets.
All these targets of whatever. Even the US is like, we're not fucking doing that. And, they've withdrawn from all of this.
They've popped smoke and all that.
But this is a dirty process. But this is the bullshit of like, well, I know, we'll just let them do it. We'll let them put it into the atmosphere and we'll just do it over here. But also, at the end of the day, now they have a complete strangle on this. And it's been that long of which they're producing them. It's not only the manufacturing base of which we'd struggle with, it's actually the knowledge base also. Because if you think, say people have a 35-year working term of which they go from university through to retirement age. Once that ends, like once you're not manufacturing for that long, it's not only the factories you don't have the knowledge of how to do it. So Holden has been closed for 10 years, say. Give it another 10 years, and there's no one who's even working age who worked in the factory who can build a car. So we have to start from scratch. We're starting. It's like America, NASA could not build.
Just about to reference that.
The rocket because all those guys are gone. The blueprints are gone. Whatever. It's impossible to do at this point in time. The knowledge base is gone, and that's one of the problems we have with these minerals. And Australia, we are an incredibly fortunate country of what we have in the earth and grows on the earth. Australia, by all means, should be as wealthy as Singapore, and we're not. So I don't know what the fuck we're doing. I don't know how we can have a population of 26 million and have the most amount of natural resource per capita absolutely in the world of things that are unbelievably in demand. Gas, uranium, coal. Are you fucking serious? Like, and then food, just food in general. You know, as Asia becomes third, second, first world nations, a lot of nations, one of the big things you see is a consumption of meat increases dramatically. What we should be supplying all of this massively. The fuck? Anyway, I digress. Back to China. That they just have a complete strangle on all of this. In Australia, we could produce the minerals. We're absolutely not going to. And there are American military industrial firms at the moment who are paying 50 to 90 times what they were paying for these same minerals from China.
Get out of here.
50 to 90 times. And there is a complete... remind me after this. I'll send you this article. And this isn't an article. This isn't Fox or CNN or Bloomberg or any of these doing these articles. These are think tanks who people would bore you out of your mind to read. It's an 80-page think tank from a PhD in military, whatever, in foreign affairs. And it's basically a back briefing that will be handed off to the Pentagon by Russi or Rand or any of these endowments. And you look and you're like, what? It's these simple things. And you're going, and it's not one thing. It's like, oh yeah, we struggle to produce bullets. We struggle to produce any form of night vision equipment. You know, what the fuck, guys? And this is where if I was the Australian leader, what I'd be looking for is sovereignty. I think the West in general, other than maybe the US is still there, is giving up their own sovereignty for a utopian vision, maybe I would call it. And this goes into the argument of you've got pillars of sovereignty, and a country's pillars of sovereignty are trade, military, and then your energy. That's your pillars of sovereignty. Now, Australia is actually pretty good in sovereignty. We are a pretty sovereign nation. Our problem is massive country, small population. That is Australia's issue. But then you've got these nations, and one of my guys behind the scenes, I work with a lot of people who are private, who are analysts but not public facing. And I'll tell you, they're a lot better than all the public facing ones because they're not scared to say it as it is. And they've gone, if you believe that Europe has increased its sovereignty by cutting off Russian gas or Chinese product, you're an idiot. Now, ideologically, it might have been the right thing to do, okay? It might have been the right thing for Germany to go, we're cutting off Russian energy, okay? Germany's manufacturing base is gone, basically. It's from what it should be of a country of 90 million people. But now that you've cut off that energy, that sovereignty pillar has now, and you've cut off your sovereign energy that was massively nuclear for Germany. Now you're completely reliant on American LNG, American oil. So not only are you now reliant on American military hardware because Rheinmetall and these other nations, these other companies who produce military equipment, they just can't produce the need that we can see in a war. Russia is out producing up to 10 times what the West is in just basic things like shells, and Russia's not a giga economy by any means compared to someone like China. If Russia's 10 times, China's 100 times minimum. That's only assuming China has 10 times the manufacturing of Russia, which it probably has 100 times. So your military is now reliant on the US. Your trade is very reliant into EU or into US, and now your energy is reliant on the US. If you believe Germany's become a more sovereign country because of that, it might be all fine now, but if the US says jump, you have to say how high, because you have no what we refer to as a healthy balance of sovereignty. Now, the country with the best healthy balance of sovereignty is India. India has by far, from me and my other guys, we're looking at this, by far the healthiest balance of sovereignty. Their military, just take military as something to relate to. They have a massive mix of Russian hardware and American hardware, with other countries' bits of hardware fucking trickled in. So if America has the shits with India, as they do at the moment, and they close that off, well, they're going to swing onto this, just start buying over here and just bring in more shit, whatever. And India, their economy is a lot West focused and BRICS focused. So Trump tariffs India, and they just lean into BRICS.
Yeah.
And this is, I referred to before, about decades of relationships is being undone by Mr. Trump at the moment. And it is true that he has put in today is the, what date is it today?
28th.
28th, has put a 25%, bringing up to 50% tariff on India. And India is not playing ball. India's like, yeah, this is our sovereignty. This is our energy sovereignty, is to buy oil, crude, from Russia. That's what we're doing. And there's a term, the French term, excuse me for anyone who speaks French, but raison d'etat, which means reason of state. Now, I don't think many states do this, but the idea behind raison d'etat is a state will do what's best for itself first, regardless of your relationships. And India is expressing raison d'etat to secondary sanctions. Secondary sanction, as far as we are sanctioning you for doing trade with them, is a huge breach of independence and sovereignty. And like, look at what we preach about sovereignty and independence in the charters. Are you fucking serious? That's a huge breach of that. It's like me saying you can't be friends with that bloke because he's friends with him. Like, are you fucking what? Some
childish game.
You're a fucking child. But then there's also, and I believe the biggest threat to the Western world is hypocrisy in international affairs, at least. Everyone views the West as just complete hypocrites outside of the US. Outside of the West, I mean. And you need to remember, the West is the exception, not the rule. The West is, maybe, 700-800 million people, 8 billion? And a lot of our society's fertility is dropping while theirs are increasing. We are the exception, not the rule. Most people think we are bloodthirsty hypocrites. That is something now. Now, I'm not saying they're right, but I'm saying that's how a lot of people see this. And where India's pushing back, and India's the largest democracy on the globe, is they're going, when you guys put a price cap on Russian oil, you did this and you approached us to do this, to buy within the cap to stabilise oil markets. Now you're telling us that we can't purchase any of that, of what you told us. You've moved the goalposts. What the fuck is going on? And we get the situation in which we're in today, which there is historical friction and hatred between India and China, the two largest countries on earth. And for the first time in 7 years, I believe within the next week, is the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in China. And it's the first time a leader from India is going to China for the first time in several years. And Xi and Narendra Modi, so China and India's leaders, are having relations. And I'm like, yeah, this is what you do, is you push these BRICS countries much, much closer together. This is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
This is a nightmare. India has the largest diaspora on earth as far as the most amount of people outside of their nation within countries.
Isn't like half or what is it, 34% of the world's population from India and China?
Yes.
Alone?
And then you look at purchasing power parity of GDPs. And this is a big thing. Trump the other day made it, and I don't want to sound like I'm banging on Trump here, but he's the leader of the free world, okay? Who is making some grave errors, in my opinion. And I work with the doctor of economics, and he from day one was like, I don't get this.
In regards to the tariffs?
In regard to tariffs, in regard to a lot of stuff.
Yep.
But he's the leader of the free world, so I guess he has to sort of cop it. And I would absolutely, I hounded Biden on fucking everything because he was an idiot. But you are undoing your hegemony as we speak. He made a truth.com post. I always say .com because I said it once and everyone went off. So that was from my channel. But and about like how poor India's economy is, and that just doesn't relate to reality. Okay, if you do GDP per capita, maybe yeah, they've got fucking 1.5 billion fucking people. But if you do the purchasing power parity of the GDP, it's massive. It's arguably larger than the US. And China, purchasing power parity is insane. Yeah, their GDP in dollars might not be as much, but they're not building tanks and warships and pipelines in dollars. They're building it in yen or in rubles. It's all of this. And we are actively, by trying to cement our own utopian idealist vision, we are cementing things like BRICS and showing BRICS why they need to be independent of us. And so if we're willing to sanction sanction India for just doing trade with Russia, or sanction whoever for just doing trade with them, does that not go to them? Do you not, as Putin or Modi or Xi or whoever, do you not go, yeah, this is the reason we need to de-dollarize, because the dollar is being used as a fucking weapon against us?
It's been used for a weapon for decades.
Yes, oh, absolutely. It was weaponized against Australia with tariffs on our steel. That is a fucking act of aggression. Now, I'm not saying we're about to fucking bomb Washington, but hang on, we have free trade agreements, we've got all this, and we have men, friends of yours and mine, who have died for a war of which you instigated, the US. Like, come on. And it concerns me about this idea of, these shithole nations getting together to do this. And I'm like, if you step into the next century going, China's a shithole, everything they make sucks, they're no competition.
I think that's a narrative we're just continuously fed, right?
Well, every analyst, every advocate, every propagandist who has had these time frames and when China's collapsing, they've always been wrong. They've always been wrong. And you know, yeah, the average person, I don't want to live in China. I do not want to live in China. I think it's an authoritarian regime. But do I think it's a real threat from military action? Not really. Do I think strategically is a massive threat to regional and global hegemony? Yeah. China's all under heaven, Wang Yi sort of policy. Oh, no, sorry, not Wang Yi. Chen Jie. It doesn't. Their strategic patience doesn't align with them doing kinetic invasion. It just doesn't line up with their history. It doesn't line up with the amounts of military doctrine we've got. But due to being more authoritarian, being a 5,000-year-old state, they can just see that, well, in 1,000 or 100 years, we'll just take it. Chairman Mao said this about Taiwan. That I'll give it 100 years. And that is something that we don't have because of our systems and this complete turnover of everyone all the time, is we just don't have any sort of strategic long-term thinking. And I'm like, well, that is everything that Trump did in 2016 got thrown out with Biden, and then everything Biden did got thrown out with Trump, and then everything that Trump did will get thrown out with whoever runs next. And you know, fuck.
So that's the thing with like Russia and China, right? They have Putin, and then obviously like these guys plan for decades. They don't plan for like, what are we going to do next term? You know what I mean? I was talking to Andrew Hastie the other day, and he goes, when you sort of get into Parliament, there's 3 big ticket items that you can, effectively change in Australia if he were to take power tomorrow or for the next election. And I think to myself, man, that's half what's wrong. Yeah. We just come in and we change our government every 3 years. They have a different set of ideas. So it's okay, we're doing this now and we're doing this. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. And then you look at stuff like China and Russia, they're planning for the long run. Yeah. Like they are planning for their next generation. Yeah. They're not planning for next winter. Like so
it's not even a generation. It's planning for, like China. I endeavour anyone, if you really want to have a fucking month of heavy reading, to read Henry Kissinger's On China. Now, in regards to what you think of Kissinger, he's an unbelievably knowledgeable about the foundations of some of these societies. So take it as you will. And looking at his overview of China and how there's policies from they take ideas from Confucianism that are still relevant today to them, and like we don't have any of that. We don't have things from thousands of years ago that we're like relating back to. Like what? Yeah, it's a real threat. It is an unbelievable threat, and China, they are every bit of soft power the US is losing, which the US is bleeding soft power from absolutely everywhere due to Israel. China and Russia are sweeping up unbelievably quickly. And
I'm telling you, even myself, I try to stay out of the Israel Gaza conflict so much. My stance on it is that I'm Australian. I don't really care what's happening over there, and you can't try and guilt trip me into all these people dying over there, because there's also mass issues in Sudan with hundreds of thousands of people dying from fathom over there, and the 5 million kids that are trafficked in child trafficking, sex rings. So don't that sort of guilt trip all them kids and that sort of stuff. It's just so foreign, and I don't really care about it. As harsh as that sounds, I care about Australia. But it seems like the narrative that is continuously pushing here, with the US continuously backing Israel, people. I even have friends now that were very, very pro-US 6 to 12 months ago, are very like, man, Fuck the US.
Yes, no,
These guys are pissing me off.
Israel has done more damage to the American standpoint in global standing than anyone has done. Fuck, I'm trying to think. In the last century. There are people who begun incredibly pro-US, incredibly pro-Israel, who are now absolutely anti. And this is where this gets skewed. You don't have to be pro-Palestine to be anti-Israel. There is a difference. There's this idea that this is binary. You're either pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. No. You can have the opinion of Hamas is a murderous terrorist group. Israel is absolutely outside of the laws of armed conflict. They double-tapped a fucking hospital yesterday with journalists and doctors.
I've seen that. Yeah,
they double-tapped a fucking hospital. What? You can have that opinion that Hamas is an extremist organisation of terrorists who committed atrocities against the communities in southern Israel. But you can also go, okay, there was, I don't know what the official figure is, let's say under 1,000 killed. But you can also turn around and go, but you've now killed tens of thousands in a bombing campaign that has leveled Gaza. Are you fucking serious? You're double-tapping hospitals, Netanyahu. You are a wanted war criminal. The US is backing you. I'll say in a reason why. The US is backing you without questions asked. Even Australia is now recognising the state of Palestine. So the US, not only have they lost anywhere where they wanted more power that's Muslim, whether Shia or Sunni, or Arab states, they're losing countries like Australia. And you can call me a conspiracy theorist, but if I look at it logically, I think this fucking lines up. I think that the US is being sexually blackmailed by Israel due to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to continue this campaign. I have. If you look,
I've been down that wormhole.
It's not a wormhole. When you look at the facts and you go, Ghislaine's father.
Weren't they Mossad?
He was Mossad.
Yeah.
He died. He's buried in Israel with Mossad at the funeral. This is all very well published. Jeffrey it's very opaque of where he got his wealth. You don't get wealth it's not opaque to get fucking wealth. You cannot hide in the US, modern day US. You can't end up with $1 billion and no one knows who the fuck you are. I guarantee the amount of people in the world who actually are considered extreme ultra high net worth, which is over 30 million USDs, 50 million Australian. The amount of individuals in that is unbelievably low, unbelievably low. And then that's ultra high net worth. But then you get into these, as they call it, a centimillionaire or a decimillionaire, whatever it is, where you're worth in the hundreds of millions into the billions.
Yeah.
The amount of individuals actually in that is unfathomably low. And unfathomably low in a city like New York. And these guys don't know who he is. Bullshit. It is, in my opinion, if you look at through Occam's razor theory of Occam's razor is something you're taught in medical school very early on, is if someone comes in with a sore throat and a cough, you think common cold and flu, you don't think lung cancer. You try and speed up the process by doing what is the most reasonable answer to this. Same as if you and I go for a walk outside and we see hoof prints in the ground, we think horse, we don't think zebra. Now it might be a fucking zebra, but it's not the most likely one. It's a very, very common in medical. And if you look at it through this and you go, so this guy was an unknown billionaire who knew all these elites, who had able to cover up all of this. His wife worked, if you look at how Ghislaine worked, she worked more like an intelligence fusionist or handler, significantly more like that than a wife. Absolutely did. And you've got all these guys coming out to this fucking island. Your New York apartment has microphones and cameras all through it. Then you go to one of the highest security prisons on Earth, and then you have the cameras are off, guards asleep, microphones are down, all this shit, and he gets killed, and he kills himself. What? Like it just seems a little bit too fucking far when all this is occurring, and there's all these photographs of Mr. Trump with Epstein and all these, and yet I can't remember the term because there is a term for Mossad specifically using sexual blackmail. There is a term for it. And Mossad probably the most capable intelligence service in the world. It doesn't have the largest net of human intelligence. That is definitely the MSS out of China. They have more people than every other intelligence agency in the world combined. The net that China can cast is unfathomably large. But as far as capability to do things, unbelievable. And you think, but then we're seeing the reaction of all these other states and what the US is acting, and you think it seems to line up.
Have you
like
seen...
There's a circumstantial evidence. You go, hang on, so your father's buried in Israel with fucking Mossad at the funeral. They refer to him as like the god of Mossad or some bullshit. You're like, it's a fucking fantastic. Like, it's a fantastic intelligence operation, and I mean that as far as the outcome of what you're looking for. It's a horrible thing.
Not morally.
But there is nothing that can blackmail an adult male more than being a pedophile. Nothing in the world. If you came to me and said, Willie, I've killed someone, I'd be like, where's the fucking shovel? Okay? I'll fucking hide that. And if you went to your partner and said, I fucking murdered someone, when I ran someone over 10 years ago and I got away with it, your loved one could probably put that aside. I'm like, oh my God. But pedophilia is this one thing.
Everyone hates it, bro.
Everyone hates it. Everyone hates it. So that is what you go for. And I've thought about this before and thought, imagine if I got fucking drugged and put on a plane or whatever, and the next thing I get approached by someone and say, hey, look, when you went to that island, when you hooked up with that girl who was 19? Yeah, no, she was 14. What extent would I go to cover that up? And if you're a world leader, you're in their shoes, fucking any extent. And I think many nations are. It's too risky to come out with, because the amount of fallout from this, if China or Russia came out with it, it would just seem like fabricated propaganda. So they have to sort of sit on their hands. And the reason I don't know if Trump was there or not, but there's two outcomes. Firstly, he was there. He's a pedophile. Okay, that is a potential outcome. But he did lead up saying we're going to release the list. So I think another likely scenario is that he has seen the list, and the amount of hierarchy elite that is within this list would collapse America. And he's gone, this can't be released. If you were the president, you get into power going, yeah, we're releasing this, and then you see all these Republicans, all these Democrats, all these scientists, all these Hollywood stars, all these people from the UK, all these people from France, all these people from wherever, and you go, I either release this because I said it, or I'm going to collapse society as it is. Back to that raison d'etat of reason of state, is a state will do anything to protect itself. Maybe that's where it is. But the amount of back to that soft power issue. Australia and America, if you're Albo right now, what do you actually think about Albo and his wife? What do you actually talk about? Like, oh my God, like what the fuck is this going on? And then like a country like Indonesia. Indonesia is approximately 200 million people. Massive and massively growing. High fertility. In our lifetime, we'll become a first world country. Absolutely will. And majority Muslim. And they're looking at what's happening in Gaza and going, we can't work with these states supporting this. And now, Mr. Wang Yi, who's what I came out before when I meant Tun Jay, but Wang Yi is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for China. And I'm going to butcher his words here, but he said words to the effect of, if America think they can take the high road on Russia, Ukraine, you're out of your fucking mind. Like, these leaders, these Western leaders currently have a inequality of compassion and a hierarchy of human suffering. You see what's happening in Gaza, not a bleep, really. You see what's happening in Ukraine, which is horrible as well. But it's everywhere. It's the worst thing ever. And what I've said is, if Mr. Zelensky of Ukraine and the Ukrainian forces started bombing Moscow to the point that Israel has bombed Gaza, we would tell Zelensky to fucking stop. Even though they're we have blatantly said in the West that Russia is our enemy. We have said that. But if they were doing that to the Russians, we would be like, you can't do that, Zelensky. That's too far. There is certain incidents of which there's been potentially crimes committed, allegedly crimes committed. There's been crimes committed because of fucking video footage, where the Ukrainian forces have stepped over the line on Russian forces. and it has been spoken out against. Of course, there's plenty of incidents of Russian forces committing blatant war crimes against Ukrainian forces. But none of these leaders are speaking anything about the IDF, double tapping this fucking hospital. Now, I don't give, honestly, and someone said to me yesterday, oh yeah, but one of those journalists, it was Hamas. I actually couldn't give a fuck. I don't give a shit. If
I watched the footage on that, and I watched the footage on that, and it looked like there were a bunch of guys trying to get injured civilians out of it.
Yes, that's what it is. And if one of them is Hamas, I actually couldn't give a fuck, because the laws of our conflict still apply. And Israel's NCV, the non-combatant casualty values, is unfucking believable of what you work with. So, and these are classified numbers, so you have to work off what we have seen and what has been leaked. But in Afghanistan, Iraq, that typically Western militaries and coalition militaries worked on like a 1-to-1. That if you had to kill a civilian to kill bad guy, 1-to-1. HVT, potentially 10-to-1. In extreme circumstance, 30-to-1. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to kill 30 civvies to kill Osama bin Laden. It is rumoured, and it's rumoured to be true, and then you see the footage and go, well, it correlates, that Israel is commonly working at 30-to-1, 100-to-1, and in one case at 300-to-1.
Whoa.
And what I've said is that to me just doesn't fly. I'm not saying that, Hamas are the fucking good guys. No, I think every one of them should be buried under that fucking hospital. But you can't be operating like this and then saying that you are the ones upholding good order and rules-based order in the world. Every country looks at that and goes, you fucking hypocrites. Like, if you were sitting as an Indonesia, say, or one of these nations that is massively growing, and the American and Western propaganda is China's the enemy, and you're looking at China and the way they act on the global stage, and then you look at what America and Israel are doing, and you go, well, I don't see them doing that. China does plenty of bad shit domestically. I'm sure it's very well fucking covered up, but people aren't seeing that, and it's something that I think the soft power in the US, like the US is just losing all these small countries, and these are unbelievably important going into the future as the US does reduce in its global dominance hegemony. This is why the Soviets, the really good book, I can't remember the author's name, but it was the sequel to Sword and the Shield, which Sword and the Shield was the largest single intelligence leak of all time. Of when the Soviet Union was collapsing, there was a guy who was he kept all the records for the Russian GRU and the Russian KGB, who's their military and domestic intelligence agencies. He was keeping records for them and was fucking off information, writing it down and all this. And what we know, the sequel to this book is more through these documents, is that the Soviets and the Americans, the capitalists and the communists, were trying to get as much power in the third world as they could because they saw that as their way to further global dominance. And we still do. But Africa see us, that they've worked with the West Africa see Western imperialism from back when fucking ships were landing. And then they've seen that we've worked with, like, say, if you're in Mali, we worked with the French for decades and we still live in complete poverty. What the fuck? So then they try someone else. And China rock up with strategic intention. We'll build you a railway and we'll build you an airport. No, we'll give someone else a go. And this is where I see US losing soft power. What soft power turns into hard power as societies grow. And it's a very, very dangerous trajectory when you see the trajectory of nations. And the only thing people push back on China is and I'll push back on this, I'll vehemently push back on this, is China will have a population collapse. Now, I don't disagree that China's current demographics don't look great. Now, to go back to another murderous guy, the problem is you can't put disagreement and competence in the same bracket. They're two separate words. You cannot say, and Churchill wouldn't say this, neither would Roosevelt or Truman, that Stalin was not a competent leader. Was he murderous? Did he do evil actions? Absolutely. Was he an unbelievably well-informed, strategically patient statesman? Absolutely. Read through what Churchill says about him. Mao was very similar. Mao was as murderous as anyone. Chairman Mao from China. But Mao shocked everyone, including the Soviets at the time, saying that if we step into a nuclear war, we have this many hundred millions of people. Even if we lose 30%, we've still got hundreds of millions. You lose 30%, you're down to tens of millions. We will recover. And this is what I think about China's population collapse. People go, it's going to collapse at 30%. Well, if Australia collapses at 30%, if Australia does, we're in strife. China does, there's still going to be at like a billion fucking people. It's still massive. And where I don't buy, this is what I don't buy about China. If China was actually predicting a population collapse within their intelligentsia, within their academia, China will step over ethical boundaries of which we wouldn't to fix that. And very simply, you can fix fertility rates very simply if you don't have red lines. Very fucking simply. All you do is if I was a Chinese dictator, say, for instance, maybe in my next career, you just restrict contraception. You just can't get abortion. You can't, just stop having condoms. No pill, no IUD, no fucking abortions. And you'd have North Korea style fertility. North Korea's got very, very high fertility because young people still fuck and are going to have kids. And you're going to have a lot of young people. Or you have maybe less is you have social credit. China's social credit system, which is fucking on the horizon for us too at some point. And you and I, being more conservative speakers, we're fucked. Is you just have for childless mothers or childless couples, you just have bad social credit. So people are incentivized to have children. And this is what and even down to then, if we want to go a bit further, of ability to look into eugenics. And this is why I don't buy that argument. Is I'm like, China, if they are looking like, yeah, we're going to be fucked, the ethical boundaries of which they would cross, doesn't predict to me that it's actually going to be as severe as that. Because every other collapse of China has been and gone and not happened. And we are not going to stay. And I'm not saying we should. I think those ethical boundaries separates Western society from a lot of nations, and why I'm proud to be a Westerner. Which is, if I said proud to be a Westerner, now I'm a Nazi. But also we need to look at the people playing a different field here too. And this is why I think that ultimately we'll lose the AI race too, which is probably the largest threat to an extinction is AI. But the US is apparently
like Terminator style AI.
No, just civil unrest. Like if no one has jobs, the fuck do you do then? Like no one has jobs, then things start falling apart. You get lazy. You end up at a late stage communist society somewhere. A lot of theorists think we'll have this perfect socialism for a couple of years, that AI will fix all our issues for a couple of years, and then it will be like, and then it will sort of go to shit. That we think we actually might reach that threshold for a minute of time. But you can listen to theorists and philosophers speak on very optimistic and very pessimistic views, and the left and right of arc of AI is massive. Now, it's predicted that China's a few years behind the US on AI, which potentially...
Do you believe that?
At the moment, maybe, but I am getting more and more... I question it more and more. DeepSeek was a Sputnik moment. The Sputnik moment was when the Soviets sent a satellite into space and shocked the Americans. Like, oh my fucking God, we thought we were ahead of this. DeepSeek was definitely one of those. But then again, it's down to ethical boundaries. As Mr. Andrew Hastie said on your podcast, he said the biggest thing AI requires is energy. Like, you just need massive energy. And what does energy do? Every very efficient, as far as getting a lot of energy, has massive byproduct of you're either burning coal, you're in a nuclear reactor, whatever. But I doubt that we will start building coal plants to just connect to a fucking computer to run an AI. I don't doubt that they'll do it for a second. If they see that that is their way to hegemony, and Tianjie, as far as China all under heaven, because that's how China see themselves, is they see themselves as all under heaven, and that they, regardless if it takes 10 years or 100 years or 1,000 years, that they are still the centre and will become under. And they see that this last couple of centuries, ever since the opium crises, ever since that they've sort of just been pushed down, but their rightful place is there. And through the Politburo, through the leader, they can have 100-year strategic outlook. That I don't doubt that they will do things like that this is what we're doing. Or we know we have ethical boundaries on what AI can do. I don't think they're going to put those. I think they're going to go, well, back to raison d'etat, reason of state, that we will do what it takes to put us first. Fuck these ethical boundaries. Fuck the environment. We're building a coal plant to fire a computer. And even down to one of the biggest concerns about a kinetic action with China is China pumps out way more bachelors in STEM than the US. And just that alone should be of concern. Now, typically societies which are more authoritarian or have a vertical structure typically don't have the creativity of a more open country, but that are highly efficient. So Soviets and the Americans are a good example of this. The Soviets didn't have the creativity in a lot of items that the Americans did. But if the Soviets stole the plans, like when they got the plans, I believe the F-18. No, the F-18 must have been too old. But whatever fighter aircraft it was, the efficiency to then put that into order, because you've got a vertical structure, is very quick. But you don't get the creativity because you don't breed that in a structure like that. But this is the thing, is if it's painting boxes, it's very, very efficient. And this is the whole reason that Ukraine, for instance, has martial law, is in a time of war, you turn to martial law structure to have a vertical political structure so you can be highly efficient. We have, you enact martial law, so Albo, say we're in an existential crisis, so Albo can just say, factory, you're building tank shells. That's what you do. Other than this society of which we want to live in, which is free and open and democratic, obviously you and I want to live in that. But in that, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of red tape, you've got to go to the opposition, you've got to go to the Senate, that's why you want, at time of crises, existential, that's why you have martial law. That's why Ukraine is acting the way it is. And that's why Zelensky is a leader of a hybrid democratic country, but currently authoritarian, because that's what you do at time of war. Now, I am vehemently against Ukraine actually not having elections at this point in time, given the AWOL rates.
Didn't they cancel them?
Well, yes and no. So this is hard. We can step into this, but it is a lot. Is by the Ukrainian constitution, under martial law, you don't have to have elections. And this has happened plenty of times. They've cancelled elections during war. Because I see both sides of this. One, we're saying we're protecting democracy in Ukraine while not having elections. But on the other hand, you're going, yeah, but there's 10 million people who are in occupied Russian territory. There's a fucking million guys on the front line. There's 15 million people who have fled to Europe, into the EU. There's 7 million people who have fled into Russia. How can we have a democratic process here? And that's the counter argument to this. But under their constitution, they don't have to. Now, the reason I think Ukraine should now be having elections is obviously there's no appetite. There's less appetite for war. The amount of how many people do you think how many people? How many cases of AWOL do you think the Ukrainian military has had?
On a percentage?
No. Just this first. I'm going to open my phone. I'm not being rude. I've just got the number here. How many people do you think have gone AWOL this year for the first 7 months from the Ukrainian armed forces? How many cases? Sorry, not people, because some might be second time.
How many are within the Ukrainian armed forces, like as a population?
Let's say 1 million.
1 million. I reckon 45%, so 450,000.
No, it hasn't been that much. But these are cases of AWOL. And I'll read this out because I said this is a very dangerous trend. For the reported cases of AWOL, in 22 was 6,980. In 23 was 17,650. And this is reported. 24 was 67,000. And for the first several months of 25, it's been 110,511 cases of AWOL.
So it could get to that number that I said.
So,
if it continues.
well, this is what I've done here. Is I've gone. The current rate for 25 is 30 times higher than in 2022. That is 15,780 cases per month, which by the end of 2025 would be 189,000 and a half people. And that shows the appetite to continue, that there are systemic issues. And although Ukraine is politically locked into this return of sovereign borders, independent borders, which most international countries and most sovereign nations see that is the border, but also look at it realistically and go, but you may exterminate your entire population trying to get that back. And I think it's time for a say on that, because there is no military analyst in the world who's not drinking Kool-Aid who believes Ukraine can recover Crimea. Crimea is one of the most defendable places on earth. And not only that, Russia see Crimea as vastly different to other areas of which they've occupied. The threat of a nuclear weapon is actually very high there. It's very low in the Donbass. Crimea is different. Crimea, the population in Crimea is significantly pro-Russian too. Ukraine has not fought anywhere yet within the population themselves and not with you. So when Ukraine fight in Avdiivka, or they're fighting in Pokrovsk, or they're fighting in Kupiansk, or any of these regions, the majority of people there are pro-Ukrainian. If they were to enter Sevastopol in Crimea, fuck no. The Russians have done this on purpose. They move a lot of people in to change the pool. So even if it is a democratic, autonomous region, you can skew the vote. This is exactly why the Democrats were trying to bring in a heap of illegals across the border and migrants to then buffer their voting. That's what this is how you skew things. No one seriously believes that Crimea can be recovered, and if it was even close to recovered, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. And the war in Ukraine is just an extermination of men at the moment, of Ukrainian and Russian. And by all signs, in an attritional war like this, Russia will win. And it will either win through a negotiation or it will win through a surrender.
Do you think the negotiation is close with that Trump and Putin meeting the other day?
No.
Or is that
there's
just,
an intractable...
is that just for show?
It's a political theatre.
Yeah.
So what Putin needs to show is Putin wants to show that Zelensky is the unreasonable party. So if you look at the occupied areas of what Putin's demanding, he occupies the majority of those. He occupies all of Crimea, 99.7% of Lugansk, and the majority of Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Donetsk, also known as Donbass region. He occupies the majority of those. In my opinion, to a leader like Trump, Putin's position actually looks fairly reasonable. And what Putin said was, well, let me take the Donbass and we'll freeze the front line through the south of the nation. Now, in my opinion, Putin did not mean that. If Trump said yes, Putin would have gone, oh, fuck, we didn't actually we wanted more. But what he's trying to show is, well, he wants to show Trump that he's the reasonable party, while Zelensky's the unreasonable party. Therefore, trying to get the US to step away from Ukraine. Now, again, I said before that you can't put disagreement and competence in the same basket. They're different words and different meanings, but people do it all the same. Is Sergei Lavrov, who's the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Russia, same with Vladimir Putin, he's the President of Russia. These are incredibly competent statesmen, incredibly disciplined, and incredibly calculated guys. They've been there for 20 years. They've been doing this through multiple areas. They may make mistakes in the beginning, may have some misjudgments of things, but they know what they're doing on that political theatre stage. And that's what I believe it is. And Russia is significantly closer to their goals than Ukraine is. There's no, other than a black swan event, which is the collapse of the Russian Federation, which scares the fuck out of the West as well. There's no real roadmap to a Ukrainian victory. How are you going to push through these lines? Like, what? Like these Russian defensive lines are the biggest lines, potentially the largest defensive lines ever made. You're going to have for those who don't know, the word Pyrrhic victory means you win, but at such a cost that you may as well have lost. You could argue that the United Kingdom had a Pyrrhic victory in both World War I and II. Look at the UK now. Well, it lost its empire, and look at Germany and Japan compared to the UK now, and tell me that you fucking won that war. Yeah, legitimately. And UK completely lost its empire. And then the Suez Crisis is when the UK lost any of its legitimacy to the US. I'm not sure if you're fully over the Suez Crisis, but that was, for the French and the British, fucking existentially catastrophic then. And they're only in the Security Council at the moment because historic power of France and the UK. And I think that, I don't mean fuck off. Historically powerful doesn't mean shit. We're not bringing Greece into this because it was historically powerful. But sorry, I digress. Back to, I think the Ukrainian war needs to have some level of resolution before we see collapse. But the problem is, Karl von Clausewitz was a Prussian officer whose book on war is still taught in every military college in every fucking language anywhere in the world, whether it's in Mandarin, fucking Russian, or English. And his most famous part is war is politics by the means. That when diplomacy fails, you have a war. That all war is, and the foundation of war, is a political instrument. So Putin, he tried to have Ukraine not join NATO, which is ultimately his goal. He tried to not do this politically. And when that fails, you launch a war. That's what you do. You launch a war. It's a blunt, forced instrument of politics. And I'm not saying I justify it. I think it was an unjust invasion, but it's a political instrument. You need to look at war like that. You can't look at war as someone just launching this for bloodthirst. That's not how war works. Whether it is Mumfufu in a fucking village hitting the next villager on the head with a fucking stick, or Russia invading their neighbour, it is a political instrument of war to influence politics. And that is the war that Russia is fighting. And when people say, well, we'll give NATO-like security guarantees to Ukraine, it wasn't when Putin and the Russian elite says it's NATO. No, they mean they don't want that security guarantee. They're not going to accept that. They're going to continue. Russia see this as existential at this point in time.
Was that when Kamala Harris went over there in Germany?
No, they're still banging on about this.
Because didn't she said something about Ukraine should have the choice to be able to join NATO,
well,
and then like 6 days later, that's when
Putin this has been happening from Merkel. So not getting that, and this is the thing. And Professor John Mearsheimer, and I really think people should look him up, even if you disagree with what a lot of you says. He's an incredibly smart guy, and what I will say is a lot of people owe him an apology on what is happening in Ukraine because he's been fucking right on so many major points. Here's a book called The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, written in the early 2000s. And the whole premise of the book is nation states should be able to do what they want. They should be able to operate sovereignly, independently, as they wish. The tragedy of great power politics is that this doesn't operate like that. That Ukraine should be able to join NATO. They should be able to join the EU. They should be able to do whatever the fuck they want. They should be able to join the Kremlin if they want. But when you're a neighbouring state of a great power, sadly, your nation does not have the amount of political freedom of manoeuvre that other states do. It is a tragedy, and I agree. But when Ukraine wanted to move further to their east, further towards Russia, there was a coup. And now we're supporting this to not have... So if Ukraine said right now, actually, fuck this, we want to move closer to the Kremlin, I guarantee you would have something to say about it. If Mexico said, hey, look, fuck you, we want to move closer to the Chinese, it would be the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again. Now, Cuba, they should be able to do what the fuck they want. Mexico should be able to do what the fuck they want. Ukraine should be able to do what they want. Moldova should be able to... Whatever. Sadly, it doesn't operate like that. That's not the real world. That's utopian. And when you start militarizing, even friendly nation states have to take that as a threat as well. I have a few predictions for the future. And I think...
I was going to ask you this.
I've got two. Short and long term. My shorter term prediction, and I'm still meaning years, is something that I've mentioned about 2 years ago, and now I'm seeing all these think tanks write about this, is bringing Russia back into the orbit of the West. ASPI, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, wrote an article about this in the last couple of days. Russia and China together mutually benefit each other unfucking believably well. The reason America is such a superpower, it's got a fairly large economy, but it's very independent and sovereign from those three pillars that we talked about before. Now, Russia and China mutually benefit each other massively. So what is Russia lacking? Russia lacks massive manufacturing, large economy. That's sort of it. And a highly corrupt structure too, okay, if you will. And there's more, but and high-end technology, especially on the AI front. If you look at what does China lack? Okay, China lacks ability to launch blue water navies. They have a very small, relative to China's latent and potential power, they have a very small coastline. Well, Russia fixed that. China, at time of war and blockade, potentially could run out of food, and China as well need a lot more fuel. So what China's really looking for, it's actually got a few, but they want a good supply of food through a land border, because a land border is much harder to close than a naval border. So they want a good supply of fuel, food, ability to access seas. China's somewhat lagging in nuclear propulsion, anti-submarine warfare, as well as high-efficiency turbine jet engines. What does Russia have? Russia is very close with Australia, but number one in export of some types of food in the world, of basic food types, grain, rape, wheat, things like this. Largest exporter of many fuel types, oil, coal, gas. Massive ability for naval ports, all the way from fucking the Baltic Sea, all the way through the North Sea, all of this. So massive ability there. And yet what you can see is this is solving these fucking issues. What Russia struggle with is high-tech AI. China's fucking one of the world leaders in that. Now, and we missed a few there, is Russia is one of the world leaders in turbine engines. They've been Sukhoi and UAC, who build the Russian fighter aircraft. They've been, up there with like Lockheed and Rolls-Royce for turbine engines for a very long time. People won't like that, but they are. Russia is absolutely the world leader in nuclear propulsion, because they just never stopped building nuclear propulsion, from subs to ships to fucking icebreakers. And they are leaders in submarine and anti-submarine warfare as well. All shit China want. And what you can see is these gaps in the market of which China has, Russia filled wonderfully. And of course, Russia's population, look at China's population. Massive. Now, one of the big ones is ability to enter the Arctic. China's a near Arctic power. Russia's the only country on Earth that builds nuclear icebreakers who can actually break through the ice all year round. And China and Russia are working together on those. And China has more naval production in one port, I forget the port's name, than the whole of the West does in naval production.
Wow.
And you may have heard of I'm sort of doing something, but we're going to come back to this. You may have heard of something called the NSR, the North Sea route. Remember when the Houthi rebels, with basically very simple equipment, blockaded basically the Red Sea to the Suez Canal? And every ship, they either had to go through the Suez and pay massive insurance, because you might get fucking blown up, so insurance increases on $1 billion fucking ship, or you go around Africa and it takes about 8 days longer. There is another route from Asia to Europe. It's across the top through the North Sea, through the Arctic. Now, the problem is, it's iced over a lot of the year. Russia, world leader on nuclear, the only country in the world that produces nuclear icebreakers. Arguably, we are 50 years behind that technology.
Wow.
That is arguable on that. But China's working as well with them to produce these icebreakers that are powerful enough to break through all year round. Now, if Russia, and I can't hate on it, because I love, good business does not mean it's bad strategy, is they leant on us for the Arctic. They went, this whole law around emissions in the Arctic, and approached the West, this is years ago, with, look, we want to reduce emissions in the Arctic for fuel and oil and whatever. And of course the West, being, climate activists, went, yeah, let's do that. What we found out was it basically banned all combustion engine vessels like a diesel icebreaker because it was about fuel and oil and emission. So then next thing, the only thing that's permitted to go through there are fucking nuclear icebreakers. And I'm like, that's fucking funny. I can't hate on it. And sorry, this is where you can see there is a link that goes from some of the security services through to the IRGC in Iran that is then helping the Houthis to really close up that Suez to make the North Sea route more attractive. Now, India today, by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of India, released that they are working with Russia to open up more of the North Sea route. And what this does is it avoids all of typical Europe of what we hear about. And you have to pay passage to Russia through here and all of this. So, huge issue. I'm not meaning that we shouldn't open it. It's shorter than both ways. You just have to go through ice, which they're fixing that issue. Now, the reason I say that people are going strategically, we have to bring Russia back into our sphere of influence, is because of the issues that we put out. That China by itself is incredibly strategically dangerous to Western hegemony. But working with Russia is catastrophic because of those simple things that we outlined for moving trade around the world that has no involvement through us or through the Suez, through to military hardware that they lack in, through to change of information, of which Russia has all this experience in warfare now that they can exchange on this, all of that. Those two together backfill all of the, like, we will say, oh, well, we have the upper hand on China in this. Well, Russia may backfill that. Like, we say we've got more military fighting experience than China. And I'm like, well, we don't have more than Russia. We haven't fought in a conventional style war since Korea.
Yeah.
None of those guys are fucking still in the army. For being out for fucking 5 decades, been out for 3 decades, the 4 decades. So that's the exchange right there. Like, all of this. And there's all these strategists at the moment going, look, ideologically, yeah, we don't want to sing Kumbaya around the fire with Vlad. But fuck, we sort of need to bring them back in our fucking sphere of influence, don't we? Because we push them towards China. Next thing, China has access to some of the largest deposits of energy in the world, the largest food in the world, technologies of which they don't have, like all of this. And you're like, fuck. And I've also speculated that Putin needs to be very careful to not find himself as Russia being a, being just basically a sidekick of China, getting like absorbed into China. Putin needs to be careful of that for his own independence and sovereignty as well. That could absolutely happen. And that is that's something the Russian elite, I'm sure, are looking at. It's going, we can't just become a sidekick of this state. And yeah, there's a lot of people speaking that we need to look at bringing them back under our sphere of influence. What is going to be unbelievably unpopular in a nation, in something like the EU, in an institution like the EU. But strategically, and this, the Australians talking about this, they're like, look, we see how much of a threat China is. And the last thing we want is them having access to just bloody every bit of coal and oil and gas in the fucking world that they want, all the food they want, because this doesn't work for us. And there is some authors who are speaking that they think Russia is at real threat of invasion of China. They think China, and I disagree with this because I don't think it fits China's kinetic history of influence, but that they think China could go, well, fuck, Russia's pretty weak. Well, they've been weakened. They're not weak, but they've been weakened. Hey, let's open a second front. We'll just push up through fucking the border. We share a massive border and just take what we want. Occupy part of that. Who's going to stop us? We're not going to fucking stop you. There was always this threat. We went back to people want a black swan event for Russia to collapse and therefore Ukraine win. What people haven't thought of is what occurs following that. Okay, the government collapses. So you have the largest nuclear stockpile in the world now out of control. We got away with this in 91 in the fall of the Soviet Union by the skin of our fucking teeth. That watch Operation Odessa, that they tried to sell a fucking submarine to a cartel with missiles. Now, we got away with the skin of our teeth that nothing went wrong. We don't know if we'd get away with that again. What happens if this goes rogue and there's fucking nukes going? Like, better the devil you know. And this is where the West, behind closed doors, are like, we want to restrict Russia, but we don't want enough to fucking collapse it because we know that's a problem.
Yeah.
And an authoritarian structure can mobilize much more fast, much more quickly. There was some people behind the scenes speaking of, if Russia was about to collapse, the ability for us to mobilize enough resource to then occupy that area and stabilize it, we couldn't do. We don't. China do it.
Yeah, China does about to say.
Now,
so you're saying China could do it
this is in
a lot
theory.
quicker than
us.
us.
Fuck yeah, they could. Because Xi doesn't need to do he doesn't need to approach anyone. He just goes, yeah, these fucking 5 million dudes in the middle, just fucking go north.
He just goes.
And as well, that the remaining forces of Russia, like they're going to be far more, we can only do it going west to east. So we're going to have to go through Ukraine, go through the Baltic, there's going to be troops there. Like, it was all this. There's fucking not many on China's border. Like, there's some, but it's not going to be that much. There's all of this. I know we're getting off in the weeds, but this is talking about why there is a legitimate risk that the US did enough to delay Russia, but never enough to collapse Russia. And they're a fiscal economy. You have two sorts of economies. You've got economy that's based on speculation and spreadsheets, and economies based on digging shit out of the ground. And to try and sanction or tariff shit someone's digging out of the earth, pretty fucking hard. You'll often hear, and this is just fucking stupid, that Italy and Russia have the same size economy. Now, this is fucking ridiculous because it's taking GDP, not taking purchasing power parity. Italy does not have the purchasing power that Russia does. They don't have the manufacturing. Russia's producing 4 times the amount of armoured vehicles in the entire West, and up to 10 times the amount of shells that the entire West, including America, is making at significantly lower cost. So don't tell me this bullshit about Italy. Do purchasing power parity, you get an idea of the size of economies. But in the day, Italy has lost a lot of its manufacturing, its speculative markets, its creative markets, things like this. But if you're just digging coal out of the earth, how do you stop that? Like, how do you sanction Russian oil, gas, or coal going on a fucking train or in a pipeline to China? Are we going to put people on the border between Russia and China, or through China and Russia and Mongolia work together? Mongolia's landlocked in between the two. Bad fucking spot. But pipeline straight through. We're not going to go there and fucking do shit. It's like when fucking Putin went to Mongolia and everyone says, oh, well, he's got an international arrest warrant. Mongolians should arrest Putin. You're like, yeah, okay. See how that goes. Yeah. Like for a small country like Mongolia, in between China and Russia, trying to do and that's a good example of great power politics. I'm sure the Mongols were going, yeah, fuck, we probably should, but they need to look at, well, we've got 2 great powers, 2 nuclear powers sitting on our border. This is a problem. So the whole thing with China is a very scary long-term process that is happening with very, very dire consequences. And most people will talk about Taiwan. Look, I'm in 2 minds whether Taiwan happens or not, but I'm also in 2 minds if we actually defend it or not either. Like, are you telling me?
Can I
Can I
just jump in? Why, just for all the listeners out there, why is Taiwan so important to the West?
Chips, basically, but that is reducing rapidly too. Actually, the best policy Biden did was to this way Nvidia stock made everyone millions of fucking dollars. This way you have rich wage earners. Is reduce that, and that's why it was so important. But it's also important. It's important ideologically because where we see nationalism and communism and what occurred there, and the split off from Taiwan, and both the Taiwanese and the Chinese, they see themselves as the real Chinese government. Yeah. But if China, let's just say tomorrow, China go, we're going to do kinetic action against Taiwan. Are you really saying to me that American carrier groups are going to be bombing the Chinese coast? Like, it might sound nice in theory to say, but if you're in the Pentagon or you're in the fucking operations room in the White House and we're saying, yep, look, we're going to start bombing a country there's 2 things. There's what's called latent and potential power of state. Now, latent power is what you have, and it's basically what is your GDP and what's your population. Sorry, that's incorrect. That's potential. Latent is how big's your army and what are you manufacturing for the army right now. That's what you've got. Potential is basically how much can you make and how many can you mobilize. And that goes off GDP and population. And China's potential power is fucking crazy if they start mobilizing. Yeah. An ability to absorb loss, which the most important metric in attritional style war, it would be an attritional, the most important metric is ability to absorb and replace loss.
Is that what Russia's good at now?
That's why Russia's very good at it. Russia's always been good at this. Yeah. Napoleon lost because of Russia's ability to absorb catastrophic defeat.
Russia also gave up Moscow, right?
Yes.
In that,
Yeah, but this is the thing. Their ability to absorb catastrophic defeat and the initial opening blows of war, even if catastrophic, are rarely determinative of the outcome. That's Iskander Rahman, who's a professor for the IISS, but I forgot what that's called. But they're really fantastic guy, unbelievably knowledgeable. And the Soviet Union and Nazis were the same. Russia had an initial catastrophic defeat against the Nazis. But then this is where the Nazis thought, well, they can't recover from that. And they fucking recovered. Next thing, they're marching through Berlin. And they absorbed and took 27 million fucking losses, which the war in Europe, we like to say that we won. If you look at the actual cost to a society, the tragedy of the 20th century belongs in Eastern Europe, from Belarus to Ukraine to Poland to Hungary to Russia. It's a tragedy. From Stalin's fucking purges through to the other genocides that people don't speak about that occurred there. But that ability to absorb, and that's what one thing with a population of 1 billion fucking people can do for you. And this is why our troops are too highly trained. I know that sounds stupid, but think of you in the military and think of your mates. The ability to replace you takes fucking years. You're a full track when you left, Corporal?
No, I was just digger.
Just digger, okay. Yeah. But think of the skills at which you've acquired as a digger.
I dodged rank a lot.
Yeah,
so.
okay. But, okay, let's take, for instance, a digger in the Australian Army. You are only proficient after minimum of 18 months of training. You do 3 months of basic, 3 months of School of Infantry, 12 months before you're actually in the unit, before you're deemed proficient. So if we have a digger die, it takes us 1.5 years to replace this guy. If we have a corporal who's like, for those unaware, command soldiers on the ground, it takes minimum of 6 years to replace him, say sergeant, 10 years to replace them. The key to attritional war is having the best low-end army possible for knowing you're going to lose a lot of guys. And I spoke about this, we're speaking about public speaking. I was doing a briefing recently to an infantry unit. And I said, look, Russia's taking, say, 400 casualties a day. Say, 400 to 1,000, say, in that. How long could this unit operate if they took that? And they said, 1 day. Look at that. That's the problem. Is there's no... Russia has tier 1 and 2 units, but within just the regular Russian forces, there's no troop in that. It's going to be as good as any of you guys. But they work off numbers, and the Chinese work off numbers. A German Panzer tank was miles better than a T-34. But for every T-34, Russia pumped out like fucking 10 or 15 tank. And that's the problem. And this is that numbers game that we get into. And even down to psychologically, I think the Chinese population would wear more loss and suffering than the American population due to the prosperity of America. And I know that's a hard thing to get your head around, but the more prosperous a nation, the more of a tragedy it is if you have high loss. If America had 1 million losses, imagine the fucking outcry about that. And even a percentage of population. So it's all of these things that gets very dangerous. So you're telling me, sorry, to digress back, you're telling me that you're in the Pentagon and you're going to fire bombs on this fucking thing, not knowing if the next one's coming to Washington. There's an old saying that says we're not going to trade New York for Frankfurt. And this is a real politic, if you will. Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor from Germany, real politic. People say the best in diplomacy of the world. Is that it's realist, it's down to earth. You have to look at it through a lens of that, of when it was asking about NATO. And I still question how adamant America is to Article 5 in NATO. And this is would you trade Frankfurt for New York? I would trade New York for Frankfurt. And this is the thing, is if China launched this, I think America's involvement will be shooting down airborne targets, which America will run out of interceptors instantly. Basically, America almost ran out of interceptors when Iran was firing at Israel, almost ran out of air defense interceptors, which Iran is an incredibly weak country compared to someone like China. Interceptors, you fire 2 per missile most often, and they're very, very expensive to make. Much more expensive than the actual missile offensive weapon, the defensive weapon. Defensive weapons are always more expensive than offensive, typically. You're telling me that we're going to fucking hit their launch pads. China, they fucking know this. You know how I said they work a little bit outside of the regulars? China have something called hot swappable launch pads. So these medium to long range missile systems, very similar to, if people are aware of what an Iskander Russian missile is, it's similar to that. They're what's called hot swappable. So in typical Russian or Western militaries is we have where the nuclear silos are, where the nuclear weapons are, and where the conventional weapons are. China has what's called nuclear entanglement. So these silos have two warheads in them. They have a conventional warhead and a nuclear warhead. And they've got the fucking booster of the fucking missile sitting there. And it can be hot swappable. They can swap the warhead on top of that fucking thing. The problem is, that's nuclear entanglement. You target that facility technically by all these treaties around nuclear weapons. You are targeting a nuclear facility, which by the book is means to return with nuclear force. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I'm saying that it might be easy to sit here, you and I and people at home go, no, you'd fucking target it and rely on that it's not going to happen. It's a pretty big move. You're in the Pentagon going, we might be about to extinct the human race, guys.
Yeah.
Do we push that button for Taiwan? I'd be fucking concerned if I was Taiwanese. But I also look at China's history and I just think I'll give it 100 years. Taiwan's, the West's reliance on Taiwan and how important it is to the West is dramatically deteriorating because we've gone, well, if they do take it, we still need to produce chips and whatever. So that's deteriorating, and in 50 years, we'll just fucking take it. And I think Australia could be the same. I don't think a body of water is the number one obstacle for a military. Whether it is a body of water, a creek line when you're in Afghanistan to fucking cross, or a body of water jumping across a fucking ocean. Or whether it is just across to Taiwan. But across to Australia is a whole nother fucking thing. China's got a big navy. It's not that fucking big. And what I say is that's not how China operate. China operate not kinetically. They operate with strategic patience. China, if you speak to a Chinese scholar on how their politics and their strategy operates, they say, well, it's about the two popular board games that the Westerners play and Chinese play. In the West, chess is very popular, where it's very clear who's winning and it's very clear who has won. You checkmate, pop the king down. The most popular board game in China, or this is always what they draw a conclusion to at least, is called Wei Che, I believe, which is like a massive checkers board. Now, in Wei Che, when you're playing, it's far more strategic, far longer, but also it's very unclear who's winning. Even at the end, it takes you a very long time to actually decide who has won, who's got the most pieces on the board, not the king's fallen over. And this is the problem with our start and stop policy when we have a new leader in every 4 years, is we don't know who's winning because we're stop and start. We're relying on a king to fall, not more pieces on the board. And when you really analyse it, you go, oh, fuck, they've won. And that's how people always relate to China's strategy, is China doesn't play chess. They play Wei Chi. And it's not clear what's exactly going on, where the pieces of the board are, and that China will do things that seem against their national interest for a long term. Like, they'll completely work with the West if it suits them to do. Like, they happily build all their fucking minerals and to produce solar panels because they go, well, then we can choke you off on that. So it's all of this. And it just doesn't, these kinetic, like warriors who are like, yep, China's going to have fucking 50 ships come on. I just don't believe it in modern war. Like, I just don't, like, if China tried on Taiwan and Taiwan is nowhere near the challenge Australia would be, you're going to lose 1 million men in the strait, minimum of 1 million men in the strait before you land a single soul there, because the only way to do it is all at once cargo ships filled with guys. And if you have a cargo container ship, well, an aircraft carrier can have several thousand people on it, operational. If you just fill the cargo ship, you could have 50,000 people on it. I don't know. They're just on the deck. You're only going to be on it for an hour, a couple of hours. But you're going to have them going down with 100,000 dudes just drown. I just don't see that is what they're really looking to do when they go, Sanjay, all under heaven. In 100 years, we'll just have enough soft power that we'll just change and you'll just be part of us. And like in Australia, you just import enough people that eventually Australia remains democratic, but you become an arm of another nation. And this is the thing, is people think that we, by a non-democratic process, would become more allied with the nations. No. It could be by a democratic process that you import enough people and they produce enough people, then therefore the democratic process still stays in line, but the European Australians, if you will, become a minority to a degree, and then things in government start changing. Like that's and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's part of, if you think very long term, and we just do not. We think in tiny stints. We can't even fucking decide what we do with a submarine fucking contract. Like, we can't. Australia, you and fucking I knew that 20 years ago we should have had self-propelled guns instead of fucking a towed artillery piece that is a fucking piece of shit. Like, it's not a piece of shit, but like in the modern environment, it's a death trap. You and I knew that, and we're still deciding on which fucking one we're getting. Like, and we're not producing it. South Korea's producing it. South Korea's got their own fucking problems. Like, South Korea, by all means, in our lifetime, is going to absolutely crumble with fertility rates. And South Korea's riding the ship down. They're like, we're not importing people. We're just fucking, we're going down with the ship. So is Japan. Japan's somewhat less so. So there's all these issues, but I as well with China, and this will, sorry, I'll let you speak. I know I'm going on, but
no, it's all right.
China, I don't think the Australian public see China as an existential enemy of ours either. So it was very clear. It's very easy to do politics and diplomacy when you have an enemy of which you all agree that's the enemy, and the easiest time to do foreign politics in Central Western Europe and America and Australia was when you had the communists. When you had the Soviet Union, that powerful, that's all of our enemy. Now, whether we're Liberal or Labor or Greens
Doesn't
or this,
matter. Doesn't matter.
That's not what we want. That. Now that that's gone, we don't really have that. And honestly, if you walk down fucking Hindley Street tonight and you ask people, who do you see as more of an enemy to Australia? Or who do you see as the number one enemy to Australia? I think more people would say the US than they would Trump than they would say China.
Right now.
And this is the thing, is I'm not saying the US is a threat to Australia. I'm not saying that, but I'm also saying that I just don't think that the population buy this idea that there's an existential threat to cross onto the border. Now, there may well be, but if we try to conscript from that, we can't even recruit people with massive sign-on bonuses. You really think we're going to have conscription? Like, you don't think it's going to fucking work? It's just not going to work. So, yeah, I just don't think the selling of it is working. And I think a lot of people are going, well, look, and it's back to what I spoke about it with Indonesia and there's other soft powers. They're going, look, China's doing some horrible shit domestically, and it's very well hidden. We don't see them conducting the operations that we see that America is backing in Israel. Or we didn't see them kill 1 million Iraqis. Or we didn't see them abandon Afghanistan after $9 trillion and a lot of their own men die. We didn't see them go into Vietnam and then withdraw and leave it for the fucking communists to take over like we did similar to Afghanistan with the T-Man. Like, this is where I think there's this just disalignment between what the regular population say and think to what maybe the government is saying. And I'm not saying the government's wrong and the strategists are wrong, but I'm saying that if you want to have real effect on this, you got to get the public to believe it. And I don't think the public's buying it. I think they're going, well, who's done more imperialistic style fucking actions in the past couple of decades, guys? We're probably looking more fucking US. You know, it's a bit rich when, when Keir Starmer, who of all fucking people's an idiot, but when he was speaking about Russian imperialism, and I was like, I tell you, it's a bit rich of UK to be speaking about imperialism. Like, hang on, you have a pretty fucking short memory, dickhead. You know, it's, I think that there's dangers in hypocrisy and incompetence in our leadership. An acceptance of power, that acceptance that power talks, policy doesn't. And when Russia and China don't give a fuck about our ethics or values, us saying that right is might is not a case. The Europeans are stuck on this idea that ethics and values and morals win wars. It is very Wilsonianism, Woodrow Wilson, and in the First World War, which he was proven wrong in fucking self. When the fucking Second World War happened because of bullshit policies on Germany following this. Well, it was without giving a state a say, and you breed what occurred. Again, it's always what occurred in development through the 20s, 30s, into the 40s, horrible actions that you do need to wind back. But why did you end up there too? Same as World War One. If you look at the world now, it's very similar to maybe late 19th century and the power politics at play. It's... And then these leaders, and I can't believe, like the Finnish leader, Mr. Stubb, just no idea of like Finnish. The other day he was talking about Russia and Finland and, occupation and blah, 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 and how, Finland won. I'm like, but Russia still occupy a lot of your territory, a lot of what you thought. Like, and back to Germany, like Friedrich Merz, to not understand real politics. I'm like, you're the Chancellor of Germany. Otto von Bismarck, real politics, power politics is literally from your wheelhouse. How don't you understand? Like, and I think they do. I just don't think they can apply that anywhere for some reason.
Just in short, to finish off with... Just in short, to finish off with, do you think, and you just referenced the 19th century then and like pre-World War One, do you think that the world is potentially heading towards a very catastrophic event that could bring us to, a certain extent of war between big nations? Because we've seen wars right now. There's war between just two nations, or there's Israel and Gaza. That doesn't affect us.
Minor nations.
Yep. So, are we
a great state.
Yeah. Could we be seeing something catastrophic, potentially bigger, with big powers in play?
Well, there's two questions I'll ask your audience to answer for themselves before I get into it. Firstly, can Russia rise peacefully? That doesn't mean... Can China rise peacefully? Not only can China rise peacefully, but can China overtake America peacefully? Can America let that occur?
I was about to say that.
So that is the question of, can you have an overtake of hegemony peaceful? Now, Professor Mearsheimer, he's a professor with his PhD in offensive realism, where he would say no. That all states are looking for opportunities to lift themselves up. What's his name? He was an ancient philosopher. Starts with a TH. Anyway, he basically says yes. So I guess there's different ways to look at it. But then there's another factor. And the factor no one likes to speak about is nuclear weapons. The reason we have not had a great state war since 45 is nuclear weapons. Yeah. Nuclear weapons... If you were to give a Nobel Peace Prize, I'm going to give them nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
nuclear weapons have saved significantly more lives than they have taken. Significantly more. If you look at the centuries...
have they taken any?
Well, Japan.
Yeah, sorry. There you go.
Now, I am also... I don't think the nuclear weapons need to be dropped on Japan at all, but that's something else we can get into about the second front opening up from the Soviets at the time and the end of World War II. But that's a completely different conversation. And still a war crime. Even if you're like, oh yeah, but we saved more, but you still drop a fucking bomb on a civilian city, mate. But to speak about nuclear weapons, the cost of a war with nuclear weapons, it's not high cost. It's
extinction level.
Extinction. Yeah. It is extinction. They believe, if you listen to most people who have an idea about these large weapons, and these weapons are in the tens of thousands of times more powerful and deliverable
than Hiroshima.
Yeah. And the deliverability is different. Where we had to fly a plane over and chuck the fucking thing out, these are getting delivered at Mach 10 out of the fucking atmosphere. They go into orbit, and then they drop back down. They have what's called MIRV, which is multiple independent re-entry vehicles. So these break off, and then you've got 15 different warheads in the air with decoys in the air too at the same time. You can't intercept them all.
I watched a YouTube on it the other day, and
Yeah.
it blew me away.
For your audiences here, pause,
away.
go look up MIRV, nuclear weapons. It'll scare the fuck out of you. But these go into orbit too. So these fly straight up. They go into orbit so they can go at unbelievable speed and then come back down. And the warning you have on it is none. So this is another problem of you've got minutes to fire yours, because the first ones are going to come for your silos. If you don't get yours away, you're fucked. So that's always the idea that there could be panic. And accidentally have a launch, and then they'll fucking launch. Once one goes, everyone goes. That's the problem. Once one goes, everyone is fucking
Someone's got
going.
to react, right?
You've got to react. But if you are Putin, you are Trump, you are Xi, you are whoever, it's your family, it's all your friends, it's everyone you know. And everything you know too. It's people will say that the amount of dust that will be kicked up into the atmosphere will create such a layer around the earth that will end up in like an ice age. That's what we're talking about here. Like, this is unfathomable. You're talking in the first hours, hundreds of millions of death.
That's why they say. That's why they always say that. Like, as long as there's nukes around, the US will always be the US. Russia will always be Russia. India will always be India.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah.
No one will ever invade those countries.
Yes, this is why I spoke about recently. I did a video on this. I did a video on if I was the Australian leader, Prime Minister, I'd be looking for Australian nuclear weapons. Okay, fuck it. Let's have 50 nuclear weapons and no military. Fucking none. We'll have some military for like floods and fire response. But if we have nuclear bombs and we go, Beijing, if you fucking come over here, we'll just kill 300 million fucking people.
We'll just press the button.
And they'll just sit there and be looked after, and we'll just fucking boot them every 50 years. Like, that's what I'll do.
We have the uranium as well that we can dig up for it.
Yeah, the only guarantee of sovereignty in mutually assured destruction is nuclear weapons. This is why every state wants them. This is why North Korea wants them, why Iran wanted them, why Iran wants them, why I think Australia should be a nuclear armed state, and why I believe, following the US targeting Iran due to Israel tying their hands, why we'll see many countries throw the nuclear proliferation out the window and go, that's exactly why we want nukes. Because if Iran had nukes, Israel wouldn't bomb them and the US wouldn't bomb them. That's a fact. If Iran had them. So we've guaranteed that now Iran will seek them. So there was question of if they were seeking them or just, putting some pieces together. Okay, I don't care your answer to that. But now you've shown every nation in the world why you need them. Like, North Korea is going to go, see how you bombed that? That's why we've got them, motherfucker. Yeah. Like, that's why they're doing it. But at the same time, the level of devastation is so high that so far history has shown us that we do not have great state war with nukes. Now, is it a potential that we do? Yeah, it is. But all we've had, really, has been proxy wars. We fought the Soviets in Afghanistan through the Mujh. In Vietnam, it was very similar the other way. And you can have Ukraine for an example of this too. This is what Ukraine says. If Ukraine didn't give up their nuclear weapons, they wouldn't have been invaded. Now, this is changing history a little bit because Ukraine did not have operational control over those nuclear weapons. They were Soviet nukes controlled from Moscow, left in Ukraine at the fall. Ukraine couldn't fire them even if they wanted to. But if you take the point of that, if Ukraine was a nuclear armed state, would have we? And I've said, if Russia didn't have nukes and they invaded Ukraine, we would have invaded Russia. We would have bombed Moscow. You're never going to get them to give it up. You're going to see more nukes in the future, not less. China want 1,000 deliverable warheads by 2030. So in 5 years' time, they want 1,000 deliverable, which is more than you ever fucking need anyway. But that's what they're going for.
Defense mechanism.
It's defense mechanism and it's deterrence. It's the ultimate deterrence. So do I think that? I don't know. You don't know who's coming in the future. I guess, and this is why there's not going to be a decapitation strike against Putin, because it's better the devil you know. Putin hasn't fired him. Medvedev might be his fucking step in, and he's fucking tweeting all the time about nuclear fucking weapons.
He's crazy, that guy.
When Putin dies, there's going to be a fucking power vacuum. I don't know what happens then. That's going to be weird. But I am sure,
that'd be very uncertain.
Being a KGB fucking commander, I'm sure that he's thought about this. I don't know. I don't know their system well enough to know who's stepping in next. But could we see something like that? Absolutely. It could happen at any time and everything's gone. But at the same time, states, if they want to protect themselves, they can't. And this is where people say the best way to protect states is exactly the opposite of what Trump has done. So the best way to have global peace, if you will, you're always going to have skirmishes somewhere, whether it's in Afghanistan or Africa or Europe. You're always going to have something. Humans are not going to not have that. But what you want to create is that your systems are reliant on each other. So that China can't have energy without Russia, and Russia can't have this without China, and we can't have this without America, and America can't have this without us. And if we're all super entangled in each other, we create this like gridlock of like, well, we're so reliant on each other. Fuck, what do we do? Like, and this is the order that people have spoken about throughout the 20th century of, if you create this gridlock where we're all completely reliant on each other, then we're so reliant on each other we can't go to war with the major states. I know that's maybe a utopian vision, but there is a degree of this too. But this is the idea of the US doing a isolationist strategy with these tariffs, trying to bring everything back to the US, not be reliant on Australia, not be reliant on Europe, not be reliant on Russia, not be reliant on China, not be reliant on India, all of this. That isolationism can breed massive uncertainty as well.
It almost seems like they're, deploying up to be very self-sufficient in case something happens.
This is the thing, though. If you are sitting in the Kremlin or in Beijing, and you look at America at the moment, you go, you're even going against your allies, mate. Like, what the fuck's happening here? And so, could we see a major? Yes. Do I think it's likely? No. I think the cost is just too high. Look at the cost Russia and Ukraine have worn on a relatively limited war. And my second one is, I think we'll see further friction within Europe. Europe has been stable for like 20 years.
What, like, so you're saying east versus west? So
No.
Russia,
I'm meaning like in Central Europe
internally.
I'm not meaning war, but I'm meaning people sick of the fucking EU. Like, if you're Hungary or Poland versus Germany and France, you're like, what the fuck policy is this? Like, fucking look at the leaders in Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, in the conservative states compared to what's happening in Central and West. The problem is those Central and West countries have all the fucking power. Germany is, I believe, 45% of the EU's total money, 25% of their total population, but have as much say at any meeting than Lithuania, who's 0.25.
Yeah.
That's a problem if you're a German. But what the fuck is this? But I forgot exactly what they call it, but even when if a friendly state remilitarizes or builds up military massively, you have to take that as potential threat. Now, Europe has always been in a state of flux. It's been stable-ish for like 20 years, really. You've had in the 20th century, we had everyone from Hitler to Stalin to Mussolini to whoever the fuck you want to say, and Europe is massively rearming. I don't know how much France, behind the scenes, trust Germany. I really don't know, because with Germany that's going on, there's massive revanchist sentiment growing in Germany.
What's that? Sorry.
A revanchism is basically almost payback in a way, or revanchism is typically
there's still cobwebs in that closet?
So, somewhat. Revanchism is typically aligned with Nazis.
Yeah.
That there's this sentiment of wanting like payback. And this is what will grow in Ukraine following the war. Because if Ukraine will say it gets occupied by Russia, there'll be revanchist sentiment grow. What will be like, firstly, fuck the Russians. Secondly, fuck the West for abandoning us. So that's revanchism, revanchist sentiment. Typically, people put it to the alt-right Nazis, but it can be anything. If you fuck me over, I may have revanchism against you.
So they're just pissed off.
And just pissed off at their own government for everything from immigration to certain policy to whatever. We see this with the AfD, who's a more right-wing party gaining massive popularity in Germany, like massive population popularity in Germany. And I know that Macron and Merz may hang out and fucking hand shandies, but if you look at the history there, we entered World War II to reduce to try and stop Germany from gaining European hegemony. You can say what you want about why we entered on morals or ethics or whatever. If you look at it through a realpolitik lens, we entered because if they took the UK, we're in fucking strife. That's it. Why do you think we entered? Why do you think the US entered so fucking late? You know, it's all of this. We didn't want one party gaining hegemony. Now, Germany's a powerhouse, potential powerhouse. Their manufacturing's fucked. Their energy is fucked. Big population still, and very pragmatic people throughout history too, and very realist. And if you look at everything from the unification of Prussia and Germany through to World War One, how World War One begun, and the increasing tensions of remilitarizing, and the remilitarizing tensions again in World War Two, and all of this. I'm not saying there's going to be war, but I think we'll see internal frictions in the EU. I think we'll see internal friction of Germans saying, why the fuck are we subsidising? Why are we, when we're 40-something% of the economy and population here, why are we subsidising a country who has the same vote as us, who has 400,000 people and a tiny economy? Why are we doing this? I think that's a reasonable question to ask of the EU. But also, I think that there always is in international affairs, if a friendly country is building up massively, you still have to question if it's on your border about what is their intention. If New Zealand was seeking nuclear weapons, Australia would still have to look across the pond and go, why are you doing that? You know, I'm not saying that we would fucking launch a war. I'm not saying that at all. And I'm not saying that France and Germany are going to go at it. But I'm saying that these are incredibly old countries who are very proud, who have a lot of military doctrine, and their historical friction is massive. And what I'm saying is, our grandparents were alive last time these nations were at war. We think, for some fucking reason, we think history started at the end of the Second World War, and now everything is just, you know, that's everything's set in stone. This is where the borders are. This is who our allies are. This is where this is. And I'm like, no, that's not it at all. If you go back to, fuck who said it, but there's a quote that says there's, Kissinger gets, this quote gets attributed to him a lot, but I don't believe it was him originally, that says, great states have no permanent friends or enemies, they have strategic interest. And this links back to what we spoke about, bringing Russia back into our sphere of influence somewhat, is we have a strategic interest to quell China. And if that means becoming friends with a foe or making a foe of a friend, we will fucking do it through raison d'etat, reason of state. We have done it. We will say, look, for instance, we partnered with communist Stalin to quell the Nazis. That's what we did. We had to do it. And if you don't think that we could, you know, make a friend of a foe or make a foe of a friend, that's not how real power politics works in history. But you need to, when I say great states have no permanent friends or enemies too, we need to look at other great states. Go, hey, we're tariffing India. India is a great state who will become a local hegemony in time. Already a local hegemony, but they're growing in power massively. India's, you know, we talked of latent potential power. India's potential power is fucking crazy. And given the trajectory of them at the moment, from everything from fertility to GDP, don't think we've spent 3 decades building that relationship. It may have been torn apart in the last 30 days. I think it probably has been torn apart. Don't think that we've got permanent friend or enemy there, because at the end of the day, they have friction with China. Modi is meeting with Xi in a few days' time in China for the SCO, with 40% of the world's population. Like, you need to keep that if the world is always in a state of flux. And Iran in the 70s was arguably the closest ally of the US. And what do we think of Iran now?
Yeah.
So this is always this, and I think a lot of nations need to be very careful of predicting that we're going to have all of this into the future. That if you right now put the values that Trump and the current American administration in their traditionalist values, if you wrote those down and then you wrote down Central Europe's and then you wrote down the Kremlin's, there would be more overlap between the Republican Party and the values of traditionalism.
100% there would be.
Yes. And this is, I'm saying there's ideological reasons, there's political reasons, all this at the moment. Why do you think, like, people disregarded why Alaska was so important of Putin and Trump meeting? The importance around Alaska was Alaska used to be owned by the Russians. So they were meeting on traditional Russian territory. But the bigger message that people should take out of that is that America and Russia are conducting European diplomacy outside of Europe.
Yeah.
And that should scare the absolute fuck out of European leaders. You are conducting diplomacy with our largest enemy and our largest threat, not even in Europe, without not even us invited. That message sent shockwaves through people that saw through it of, oh, it's in Alaska, it's just close. No, it's not. It could have been anywhere. It could have been the UAE, it could have been in Saudi, it could have been wherever. It could have been Moscow. But you're doing in part that was the Russian, like ancient Russian state. And you're doing it there to show friendship between these. Putin got off the plane and said to Trump, hello, neighbor. Because between Little Diomede and Big Diomede Islands, which is between Alaska
it's like a few miles.
Alaska, I don't know, you can walk across it. It freezes during some times.
Yeah.
It's a couple of Ks. And that scares the fuck out of Europe. And what has always scared Europe is some sort of Russia-America alliance. And this goes back into, if we want to draw, there's a term called Schwerpunkt, which means like center of gravity of a nation. And our center of gravity, the Schwerpunkt of liberal Europe, and Schwerpunkt, I'm saying that wrong, it's a German word, I apologize, but the center of gravity of liberal Europe and the central gravity of the US are not moving together. They're moving in very opposite directions. You see this of J.D. Vance speaking at the Munich Security Conference earlier this year, that we don't recognize that we're on the same path. Especially, he came out with, there's many true words spoken in jest. I guess to come back, I know it's been fucking long, but to go back to the beginning where we spoke about comedians, is many a true word spoken in jest. And J.D. Vance, Vice President of the US, the Vice President of the fucking US, comes out with, we're unsure what would happen when a first truly Islamic country gains nuclear capability. Maybe Pakistan. Well, we do know now, because now it's the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I remember that.
You take that as a joke, but he's dead fucking serious. You should take that as like a fucking wake-up call for what is occurring and how the US is moving on a different trajectory. And Putin, through his decrees, through his intelligence services, through the SVR, the FSB, the GRU, and the others that evolve, they are selling this idea of counter-liberalism. They're selling this idea of war against modernity. And it is incredibly popular to many people around the world who despise, they may not see Russia as a friend, but they despise liberal modernity and what it stands for in many conservative cultures. And if you think you and I are conservative, you and I are incredibly moderate. When we take into the majority of the world, we take in there's billions of Muslims, all of which are far more conservative than you and I. Billions of others who are far more conservative than you and I. Like Western English-speaking conservatives are still fucking liberal, really. If you and I think that women should have the same rights in this, we're actually pretty fucking lefty considering in the globe.
That's a good point.
In the globe.
Yep.
Now, what do you think a country, I don't know, like Pakistan or one of these nations thinks when they see what the West is holding dear and see what we are pushing of all these sort of narratives compared to then maybe where the Kremlin is? Now, I'm not saying then that it's this fucking conservative, blessed utopia, but they're selling it as that on the market. And the SVR, who's the CIA equivalent, the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russians, are being very successful selling this idea, especially in Africa, through plausible deniability, through propaganda campaigns, through to mercenary use, through to actual military use too. And again, stepping across lines of which we won't. And the thing is, that's that threat of the US center of gravity. And the center of gravity of the US isn't Washington, it's the voters of the US. That's Schwerpunkt. And that's where it's moving. The US, they look at France and think, if you were to ask someone on the street, what do you think of the UK, what do you think of France? They'd be like, oh, liberal shitter. Honestly. And I don't think that of the UK or France, because I've been to both nations and I love both nations. I think their history is unbelievable. But many people think that. And then you get like Tucker Carlson visits Moscow and sees what it is. And a lot of people are very attracted to that. You get a lot of Christian conservatives moving to Russia. You get a lot of Canadians moving to Russia. This is something not fucking ever spoken about, is the amount of Canadian farmers who are fucked off to Russia. Very similar conditions to farm. And Canada has basically made it impossible to farm through all this red tape, as we are making it impossible to farm. We should support farmers more than anyone. We should support farmers more than fucking veterans. So we fucking worked harder than I ever fucking did. And there's a lot moving over to Russia and being incentivized to come. So, you know, there's a lot of big power, big moves at play. So we will fucking see. My next big research piece that I'm going down, which will be the next couple of months, is these Russian intelligentsia speaking about modernity and speaking about how Russia is not becoming, they're not trying to become conservative traditional. They're trying to market themselves as anti-liberalist, which will be my next big research piece to speak on. And we can come back after that, because where that is, that's what they're trying to sell as attractive other states to partner with. And we'll see. Putin's decrees against as quote, Putin in his presidential decree, the liberalist satanic West is how he put it, when he put out two decrees, but one of them was basically that Russia will take asylum seekers from the liberal democratic West. Liberal satanic West. However it was. But what it basically was saying was that if you're being discriminated against because of your government and their policy, that we will take you in. Now, this may seem ridiculous right now,
but
give it 10 years.
Yeah.
Look at what the UK's in right now. Now, I'm not saying that therefore Russia's the fucking savior. No, I'd rather move to the UAE or to Singapore. But there's a lot of people that's very, I'm not religious, and if you're Christian or Orthodox, that may become exceptionally attractive. It's fucking. My big thing would be, I think the West is on the biggest thing is that I think the West is on a different trajectory from itself, and that's dangerous. We don't have a common enemy. You can't convince people of a common enemy. We've lost religion, and through the loss of religion, and I'm not religious, but we've replaced religion with left or right wing ideology. And that is, we'll fucking see how that goes. Yeah. We'll fucking see how that replacement goes. So strap in. And then most of the world thinks we're bloodthirsty imperialist hypocrites. That most of the world think that of us. Now, I'm not saying I think that of us, but you need to be able to observe. I forgot what they say, but to be an analyst, you need to be able to put yourself in the shoes of even dictators. And if you're sitting in Africa somewhere and you see how these countries are playing out, and you're being told that you visualize this inequality of compassion, this hierarchy of suffering, and that the Gazans don't matter, but the Ukrainians and the Russians do matter, and the Somalis don't matter at all, you don't even hear about it. What do you fucking think of that? And you've got a fucking 1.5 billion people. You know, this is the thing. That hierarchy of suffering, people are noticing more and more, and we are going to have billions of people in the next century lifted out of poverty. Once you're lifted out of poverty, you can start caring more about, you don't live hand to mouth anymore. You start considering other issues and observing the society more around you, and there'll be a big crossroad at some point for a lot of nations of, do you partner south or east, or do you partner west? And a country like Indonesia, I think, is one of the most strategically important countries in the world. Is you've got this growing country of 200 million fucking people with incredible potential power, incredibly geographically important area, and there's going to be a crossroad. You need to be part of an institution. Unless you're a great state, you need to be part of an institution, whether that's NATO, whether that's NATO and the EU, or whether that's part of the Global South or BRICS or whatever. You need to be part of an institution, whether it's economic or military. And a country like that will be seeking which way it goes. And I can tell you we're not winning that fucking battle at all.
Interesting times ahead, mate.
Sorry, mate. I know fucking 2.5 hours of my bullshit.
Every single time I always chat with you, I always walk out of there and I talk to my wife. I'm like, man, I'm really worried about the world at the moment.
Look, I am a bit of a perpetual doomer. I will say that. But I think being in the position I am, I'm better off being pessimistic than optimistic.
Yeah.
You are better off saying, you're better off planning for the fucking worst than assuming it's going to be the best. You're better off walking out the door with a gun than, it'll be right.
Yeah.
Like maybe an Americanism, but
Well, that's where I think that's why Australia is where it's at now, because it had that, she'll be right.
Yeah.
And we've just continuously let that happen to us. We've been overly optimistic rather than pessimistic, I think.
Optimistic with perpetual white guilt.
That's a good point.
To not take into account that every nation is built on blood. It's fucking horrible. History is written in blood and it is fucking horrible. But also we do need to move forwards and continuously move forwards and go, yep, look, we need acceptance. But we also need to look at what we've built. If go to fucking Italy and tell me that their infrastructure is better than Australia. Australia's been around for a couple hundred years, been around for fucking thousands of years. What we have built, what everyone has built, from the Irish to the Scots to the Yanks to the indigenous people of Australia, to everyone who's been here. What we have built in Australia is unbelievable. We've built one of the most prosperous societies in the world, one of the safest places in the world. No one can tell me that when you fly back home from overseas on a Qantas plane, the pilot comes over the fucking radio and says, welcome home, that you don't have a fucking sigh of relief. Like, yeah, I do fucking like it here. No matter how much you're lefty or right wing that you fucking hate it, that sends chills down your spine when the pilot says that, because you're home. And you realise for that moment how good Australia actually is. You're not going to get scammed by a taxi at the airport, or not to the same degree as if you're even in Greece, one of these nations. And these are first world nations, have been around for 1,000 years. Like, we need to be very proud of this. And we also need to look at freedom of speech absolutism too, and be like, yeah, you should be able to say what you think. The right to protest, the right to display, that we need to protect that too, even if you don't like it. If you don't like it.
It's going to be really interesting what's happened what's happening over the next few weeks, next few months, next few years with protesting, freedom of speech, everything like that. It's going to be really, really changing dynamic in Australia, and I just hope that we somehow come out the other side with speech laws where they can't just discriminate against certain people for their language they don't agree with, and I'm really, really worried about that. But this is like the UK playbook, and I'm worried about that.
But this is where you and I too are like, look, I don't agree with this speech on whatever topic, but I see that is just as important as you and I being able to talk about this. So, people need to take a step back and go, but the whole point of democracy is that you can say what you want. And as long as you're not inciting violence against an individual, you can go with it. Before we finish, mate, I just need to say congratulations on all your success.
Thanks.
Both your private circumstances changing in the past couple of months.
Mate, that far outweighs anything.
That of course it does. And I think in what I've seen in your work, of your newfound perspective due to being a father. I don't know, is that released on the podcast that you're a father?
Yeah, it has
okay,
been, yeah.
Good. I didn't, yeah. I'm
very private with that though.
Yeah, yes.
People know, but they'll never see her.
Oh no,
her face
absolutely, fair enough. I fully. But massive congratulations on that, and then what you've done with this podcast. I think people think that this podcast and your social media started, at the Sydney Harbour Bridge thing. What you don't see is the years of grinding and work you've done behind the scenes before that people maybe in my position do have more appreciation for. And mate, honestly, it's the tide rises all ships. I'm fucking stoked to see the success of this. I think this is fucking important. I can't believe the guests that you've got on. I can't believe I'm backing up some of them. I'm like, fucking, who's this spaz? But yeah, mate, I can't wait to see this go. I think you're probably the biggest political speaker in Australia right now.
That's wild to think that.
I don't know who else has the track. There may be some with more followers, but not the current traction.
My engagement is off the charts.
Yeah,
it is ridiculous.
You and Abby.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, it would be very interesting to do a civil podcast between like you and Abby.
It'd be interesting
if it could maintain to be civil. And I'd say right now, if you want me to moderate it, I'm more than happy to moderate and go wherever. It would be very interesting to try and find middle ground on that.
You'd have probably most of Australians watching, to be honest.
It'd be unbelievable if you could do it. It'd be also fantastic if, I've seen you with Mr. Hasty. It'd be fantastic if you could get someone like Albert too. I know.
No, I actually,
would be great.
Yeah, no, I have spoken to a few people like this about this issue, and I thought to myself, I want to take the Joe Rogan approach on it. Like if Albo wanted to come on and talk to me about tennis, I just want to know the guy. Yeah. I just want to meet him.
Yes.
He'd come on and talk about tennis, cricket, soccer. We don't have to talk politics. But if you, I also think that, with the right of responsibility of having my platform, I also think it's my responsibility to not only give one side of everything. And like we came back to the start of the conversation where that person walked out on my ideas, just because someone's got different ideas doesn't mean you can't sit there and listen to them. Doesn't mean you can't sit there and take in their information, because after that, I'm like, he's got some pretty damn good points.
Yeah, and you need to be open to that as well.
Well, and this is the fundamental basics of a democracy. And when we stop talking, we start fighting.
Yes.
And we need to ensure that open dialogue is continued. And I would definitely be open to having some like big left-leaning political members on here to chat about situation. Geez, I had the right of Bob Catter, and I've had a conservative and Hasty. But I would be definitely open to having your Chris Bowen on. I'd love to debate Chris Bowen about energy in Australia. I would love to debate Albo, or not debate him, even to get him in to chat to him about what his political run was like, who his family is, what his history is, and then potentially get into some sort of politics. But mate, thanks very much for the kind words. It's it's forever evolving situation I've got now, and
it's a wave to ride.
Yeah.
And the more you know, the less you fucking know. That's
and my stance on it is try and know a little about a lot, not the other way around. Because if you know a lot about a little, you're hamstring yourself. And I think good leaders know.
Yeah, and I think
a little about a lot, but
I think too, people like yourself underestimate in history. There's never been another time in your life where you have a soapbox to stand on with this amount of people every day. If a president of the United States 10 years ago, 15 years ago, thought he would have a speech every day to 150,000 people every single day, day on day on day, no one would rock up after the first 5 days. And you, with I don't know how many followers you've got, 150, 200,000?
It's 150, but then across all platforms, it's over 200.
Okay, so you can speak to 200,000 people every single day. That is unprecedented in human existence. And the power that someone like you actually has is immense too. Joe Rogan's more powerful than probably anyone but JD and Trump. Yeah. Potentially more powerful than Trump and JD. And I'm not saying you're fucking Rogan, but I'm saying that people in this space have a huge influence, and it's growing massively, and it's good to see, good solid fucking people sort of get behind it.
Mate, well, thanks very much for coming. And mate, thank you very much for coming in. Like I said, every single time you come in, it's like a wealth full of knowledge I just get to eat up. And mate, it was fantastic. So you performed fucking spectacular.
I was a bit worried about for those who are unaware, it's my 7th day of chemotherapy, so I was a bit like, fuck, I'll see how my head goes.
Mate, knocked it out of the park again, and I didn't expect anything less. So, mate, we'll stay connected, and until next time.
Perfect. Thanks, mate.
Thanks for tuning in to Two Worlds Collide podcast. If you want to support what I'm doing, you can grab some merch or jump on my Patreon program. Both links are in the description. Until next week, take care, guys.